The sun crept over the eastern horizon. Dear gods, if you truly exist, a figure was tearing through the forest. Crimson hair streamed behind a dark cloak as a young man sprinted down a narrow path. A red-haired girl cradled in his arms. Please help me. The red-haired girl's eyes were squeezed shut, her hands clenched tight against the young man's chest, her body trembling. Just this once, just today. Suddenly, a flash of light erupted from behind them. The light grazed the girl's dark hood and slammed into a tree ahead, leaving a deep, gouged scar. White lightning crackled from the wound in the tree. One could only imagine the damage if the light had struck them. The girl shuddered uncontrollably, the place where the light had grazed already severed. Looking at the lightning mark on the tree, she thought, him. A cut martyr face, blood still trickling down, her eyes wide with terror. Looking back, beyond the trees and mountains, the rising sun blazed. A name surfaced in her mind, Rahich, the breathtakingly handsome yet coldly beautiful peacock, his hand reaching for his bow, staring at the rising sun. As if meeting his gaze, she spoke to the young man carrying her. We have to go northwest. Don't stop. The young man glanced at the speaker on his back. Then they both fell silent. It's been 6 months since I fell into this crazy world. She began recounting the past few months, her gaze catching the wounds on the young man carrying her, her lips pressing together slightly. Everything has spiraled out of control. Today, after becoming a sacrifice and losing my virginity, I cried all my tears on the crown prince's bed. She wiped the blood from her cheek. I just wanted to die. She let out a shaky breath. The young man noticed her movement. He turned to look at her, and suddenly she was jerked forward. The next moment, she was held in his arms. But now the sun had risen, and light had returned once more. I'm running away in another man's arms. Vikin, a man trying to protect me. Her arms wrapped tightly around the man's back. Her blue eyes darted constantly behind them, putting more and more distance between herself and the shadow of that man. That man was none other than Reik, the blonde, cold-faced man who had angered the crown prince. Time rewinds 6 months to a solemn and pious sanctuary. Celine grumbled languidly. I can't believe I have to work on my day off just because I spilled a few drops of water on a vase. She stood before a coffin, inside of which lay a person enveloped in a black aura, indicating extreme exhaustion. Tears streamed down her face. Her rich internal monologue flowed. Who should I blame? Myself for spilling the water, or the archbishop for showing up at that moment? Then she muttered to herself, although my life isn't great, I still feel sorry for those sacrifices. The ritual ended a week ago, and if they don't wake up, they'll be sent back to their families. There was another coffin further away. Inside lay a girl with long blue hair. In a nearby coffin lay a girl with long red hair. Celine continued to murmur. The people of the temple must be so disappointed. They prayed for 1,000 days for that ritual, and still no sacrifice has awakened. Oh, suddenly she noticed the red-haired girl's eyelids twitch slightly. Celine stared at the girl, thinking, what did I just see? Oh, huh. Then she realized what had happened. Celine ran out, shouting, She moved. The sacrifice moved. The bells began to toll, announcing the event to all. Everyone was informed by Celine. The gods have descended. The chosen sacrifice is, oh no, it's the Rummel family's daughter. People from all over immediately flocked to the temple. In another dimension, a disheveled, short-haired girl knelt on the ground, facing a girl with long black hair. The long-haired girl angrily scolded the kneeling girl. This is all your fault. Get out of my sight. Didn't you hear me? The short-haired girl knelt on the ground, tears streaming down her face, a picture of misery. Finally, the long-haired girl spat. Get out of my house. In the pouring rain, I remember arguing with my sister, then storming out of the house, wandering the streets alone in the downpour. The incessant blare of car horns filled my ears. But what happened? I only remember a blinding light coming towards me. And then, her eyes snapped open to an unfamiliar room, strangely styled, a stranger asking, Are you all right? Celine stood by the bed, her voice cheerful. You must be confused. Your soul and body have been separated, but you'll get used to it in a few days. Lying in bed, she stared at the person, thinking, Who is this? I don't understand what she's saying. Is she a foreigner? My throat hurts. I can't say anything. I can't even move. Celine took her hand, her voice soft. I was told to give you a massage as soon as you woke up. You still can't move, can you? She lay in bed, watching Celine's movements, guessing, is she a nurse? Is this a hospital then? Then she sat up and looked around. Seeing her silence, Celine asked, "Are you awake?" Suddenly, her blue eyes lit up. A blond man approached, asking, "Is she the chosen one?" The man's golden eyes looked down at her. "I'm starting to get a headache. But don't worry, you're mine now. Your value will rise quickly." Lying in bed, she looked up at the man, thinking, who is this person? Then the man asked Celine, "Has she eaten anything yet?" Celine bowed respectfully, replying, "Not yet." This indicated the man's high status. The man sat on the edge of the bed. "Good." He then said to Celine, "Send a letter to the Rummel family, telling them that the poisonous flowers in the summer garden have bloomed, and congratulate them on selling their daughter at the best price." Hearing this, Celine gasped, "Your Majesty, are you sure you want to say that?" "Duke Romo will." The red-haired girl remained clueless, sitting on the bed, lost. Celine's face paled, her eyes filled with fear. The man, Reik's expression darkened. He said to Celine, "Write it exactly as I said." Celine could only bow her head respectfully. "Yes, Your Highness." Then she hurried away, leaving the two of them alone. An awkward silence filled the room. This is so uncomfortable, she thought. Suddenly, Reik offered her a delicate glass of water, his voice gentle. "Would you like some water?" But the look in his eyes made it impossible to refuse. His eyes are too dangerous, she thought. Abruptly, Reik drank from the glass himself. She could only freeze, letting the man do as he pleased. A sense of unease settled over her. What is he going to do? Then her eyes widened slightly, seemingly surprised by Reik's actions. Reik suddenly leaned down and kissed her. How could she not be surprised? Lying on the bed, Reik's lips pressed against hers. She found it hard to breathe. "I can't breathe." Reik's tongue parted her lips, the water he had just drunk flowing into her mouth along with his tongue. Some of it trickled down her chin. Their lips and tongues intertwined, but her mind was still clear enough to taste the water. Her brow furrowed slightly as the water continued to drip down her chin. She was forced to drink all the water, unable to resist. "Stop!" she screamed internally. Reik's eyes noticed her trembling. Finally, he pulled back, ending the kiss and the forced feeding. Suddenly, her chin was gripped tightly by Reik's hand. She regained her composure, looking up at the man. His voice a low warning, Reik said, "It seems you don't know how to use your tongue. If you dare avoid me again, you will regret it." He paused, looking down at the face in his hand. Droplets of water still clung to the corners of her lips. Reik's gaze fixed on her mouth. "Regria. From now on, your name is Regria." She felt, with the pronouncement of that name, that she had been imprisoned in a garden of thorns. Trapped and bound, she stared at him, thinking, "I'm certain of this. This man, no matter how handsome, is absolutely insane." The Belligram Empire's imperial palace was magnificent and luxurious, and the room she had been assigned was incredibly beautiful. But she couldn't find any joy in it. She sighed softly, thinking, "It's been 5 days since I came to this world." Her hand gently traced the ornate carvings on the chair. Every time she tried to stand, her body would tremble uncontrollably, and she would collapse back into the chair. "I can move my arms and upper body now, but I still can't walk." She looked out through the glass window. The only thing visible from the window is the garden surrounding this castle. The longing to understand where she was remained. Just then, the door opened and a maid appeared. It was an older maid wearing glasses, respectfully followed by another maid with a stern expression. Without a word, they approached to massage her legs. Every day, they only spend a few minutes checking on me, so I don't think they're doing anything suspicious or illegal. But if I make even the smallest sound, they come in to check on me. So they must be taking care of me because I can't walk. Escape is impossible. I shouldn't offend anyone until I find a way out. I must calmly hide my emotions. With that thought, she remembered her previous situation. The harsh words of her mother echoed in her mind. "If you're not a genius, at least you should know how to hide your emotions. It's what you're supposed to do. Stay calm, don't laugh, don't cry. What if your sister can't concentrate on playing the piano because of you?" My mother always said things like that to me. How many times have I told you? Your sister is very sensitive to how others see her. I hid my emotions, gave up pursuing my own goals, but she always criticized me, compare me to my sister. If you can't help, you should at least know how to stay away from your sister, you useless thing. Why are you so quiet? Are you even listening to me? Regria. Suddenly, someone called her name, startling her from her memories. It was Rahich. He had come again. Their eyes met, and hers flickered as she looked at him. Rahich took off his gloves, placing them on the table, and suddenly said, "You're interesting." Then he picked up a strawberry and held it to her lips. He fed her the strawberry. "It's been 5 days since you woke up. You should eat some fruit." Regria glanced at him briefly, then opened her mouth to accept the strawberry. Rahich was remarkably pleasant, lacking the malice from their first encounter. "Good girl," he said. Regria silently ate the strawberry. To her, everything Rahich said was utterly foreign. She couldn't understand a single word. She didn't understand what he was saying. She also couldn't understand what he said to the maids. He wasn't speaking English. Was it French? Or Romance? Bulgarian? She only knew that he called her name again. "Welcome, Regria." He placed his hand on his chest, then spoke a name. Rahich racial Belligram. She stammered, reading the first word. Rahich, his finger pointed at her. Regria. It was as if her mind screamed no. For the past 5 days, he had been repeating those words as if that name belonged to her. She repeatedly shook her head, trying to tell him, "No, that's not my name. My name is..." She suddenly couldn't say it. She tried again and again. My name is..." But in the end, she couldn't say it completely. Rahich watched her intently, and she thought, "What is my name?" Suddenly, she heard voices whispering from somewhere. "She is the mad daughter of high society. She has a twisted personality. She is the poisonous flower of a summer garden. That girl wouldn't die even if she drank pesticide. She is the nightmare of the entire kingdom. Her name is Beatrice Rummel." A hand slammed down hard on the chair. The archbishop was terrified, his face pale and drenched in sweat. A massive deer head hung on the wall, and a massive lion head as well. This was the archbishop's room within the temple. Crown Prince Rahich sat in the chair opposite the archbishop, his entire being shrouded in a gloomy aura that made the archbishop tremble. Rahich, practically sparking with fury, asked the archbishop, "You're telling me the future crown princess is that kind of woman?" The archbishop could only manage an awkward laugh. "Ahaha, well, the soul within that body belongs to someone else." The crown prince, overflowing with rage, demanded, "Do you take me for a fool? You can try to hide the truth, but you can't deceive me." The archbishop of the Belligram Empire's highest temple jumped in fright. The soul of a divine being will choose to reside in the body of the most compatible sacred vessel. It could be a strong and brave girl who dares to fight, or it could be a beautiful and kind girl. The crown prince threw a scroll onto the floor. He informed the archbishop, "I ordered my men to gather all the information they could on this Beatrice Rummel. This is what they brought back." The archbishop across from him trembled incessantly. The crown prince continued, "The last 3 lines particularly caught my attention. She blinded her younger brother's eye with a shard of glass. The reason is unknown. She was severely punished by her family, and then volunteered to become a sacred vessel." The archbishop stammered, "But Miss Miss Regria will be living in the imperial palace regardless. She seems quite noble, haha." The royal wedding is also fast approaching. He was now completely drenched in sweat. The crown prince rested his chin on his hand and said to him, "The commoners expect blessings from a woman who comes from the divine realm. Therefore, Regria must be perfect. There are only 6 months left until the wedding. In that time, she must completely shed her mediocrity and become a noble crown princess." Back in her room, Rahich said to her, "People from the divine realm, when they realize their situation, usually have similar reactions. They cry, get angry, go mad, or become denial-ridden, closing their eyes and ignoring reality. But you are seriously accepting everything without causing any trouble." After feeding her a plate of strawberries, Rahich's restless hand caressed her lips as he continued, "As if you've learned to accept reality from a young age." His thumb continued to toy with her lips, and she pulled back slightly in annoyance. Rahich watched her with amusement. "I find that strange." Provoked by his teasing, Regria burst out, You tongue pervert. Why are you so obsessed with my tongue? Do you know you're crazy? You're a freak." His lips curved into a smile. Then he said with amusement, "A tongue-obsessed madman. I like that title. I'm curious what kind of expression you'd make if you knew I could understand what you're saying." Her cheeks flushed. Is he angry? What should I do? No, I can't make him angry. Asterisk, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Then, with a complete 180-degree shift in attitude, she became ingratiating. I'm sorry, I wasn't angry. I didn't mean it. It's not your fault. I'm just feeling stuffy being locked up in this room. Excuse me, I have a request. Do you have a map? I need a map. A map. Reik stared at her, a glint of triumph in his eyes. Seeing him stare without replying, Regria asked, "Are you listening, Rahik?" Rahik continued to feed her strawberries. The two continued to stare at each other in silence. Finally, Regria sighed, her eyes narrowing slightly as she opened her mouth to accept the strawberry. Rahik remarked, "Unlike the owner of this body, you are much more naive." His lips brushed against hers again. Regria remained silent, closing her eyes. Inwardly, she seethed with frustration. Back in the luxurious room of the palace, the two continued their silent staring contest. But she thought, he's laughing. Does he think he can control me as easily as a puppet? I should at least learn a little of the language here. Until then, I'll try to appear compliant. Her hand trembled slightly. I'll eat whatever they give me, or whatever they give me. Rahik quietly observed Regria. Then his hand gently stroked her red hair. I didn't expect the dependence of a living person to be so satisfying, Rahik thought darkly. How interesting. His expression turned somber and dreadful. Stroking her red hair, he thought, but I must wait. She is the result of the Holy Church's 1,000-day prayer summoning ritual. Every creature in the world will kneel at her delicate feet, and she will become my crown princess. Meanwhile, Regria thought, why is he so close? What is he trying to do? She pushed Rahik away with her slender hand. Blushing, she stammered, "Wait, I want to look in a mirror." Then quickly adding an excuse, something that reflects my face. I want to see my face. Mirror, mirror. Basically I want a mirror. Reik stroked his chin thoughtfully. Oh, so she can use at least 4 different sacred languages. Impressive. Even in this world, only royalty and linguists learn that many. He then lifted her small hand and kissed it. You can look in a mirror at the spring festival, so please wait until then. Regria was still thinking, what is he talking about? Can he understand me? Just then, he stood up and called out Eos. A white-haired maid respectfully replied, "Yes, your highness." Rahik instructed her, "She seems to be in a good mood today. Bring her some food. I'm going to the sanctuary to prepare for the spring festival." She muttered softly to herself, "Eos, Alan Shah." In the basement of the sanctuary, Rahik was walking there. The archbishop bowed respectfully to him. "Your highness, welcome." Rahik scoffed, "Your face is going to get stuck like that." The archbishop's smile didn't falter in the slightest. Is that so? He asked Rahik about Regria. There's the saintess. I imagine it must be frustrating not being able to communicate with her. Rahik replied, "I've never kept a pet, but I imagine this is what it feels like. I'm worried you might be dissatisfied with her." He thought, the fact that the saintess is from the Rummel family. The archbishop continued, "Well, it might actually be a good thing. Duke Rummel has been making all sorts of excuses to remain neutral." Rahik calculated inwardly, but now I can pull him to my side. The archbishop, oblivious, continued, "I have a feeling Duke Rummel is thinking about taking his daughter back. There are rumors he intends to marry her off to the lord of the Severic family, who also remains neutral." Rahik said, "But things have turned out this way. Although it hasn't been officially announced which family the crown prince favors, I'm certain the entire kingdom will be in an uproar after the ritual. That will be a sight to behold. They will tremble in fear. They're afraid the crown princess might be a vicious dog, but they don't understand that even a poisonous flower can become medicine, if used properly." At this point, Rahik gritted his teeth and cursed. "Those fools." The archbishop said, "You are correct, your highness." His entire being turned somber, exuding a sense of oppression that made the archbishop behind him tremble in fear. The archbishop, now fearless in the face of death, spoke up. "If the two of you have a bold child, like Lady Beatrice, then you can conquer the entire continent. What a wonderful prospect." He began to fantasize. Rahik, however, said darkly, "Your flattery is overly enthusiastic." The archbishop told him, "Well, we want to make the appropriate preparations. So may I ask where you will be staying after the Holy Spring Festival?" "I don't know yet. Your Highness, please remember that you can also rest here at the Holy cathedral, just like at the imperial palace. After all, the holy grounds are also a place where all holy knights can rest. Holy knights are superhuman beings, the foundation of the Belligram Empire's power. They are born with holy blood. If the mother is a saintess, she can only bear one child, and regardless of gender, that child will carry a powerful blessing. The holy blessing first appeared in knights in the 15th century, allowing them to freely use their newfound power. But these things are necessary for their existence. If a knight doesn't have a saintess by their side, they cannot control their power. Reik said, "I've seen knights go mad after being rejected by a saintess. It would be much better if the saintess could manage those lunatics." The white-haired old man, sitting in the chair with his back to him, twitched his lips slightly. He spoke 2 words, "Your mother." This man was the Emperor of Belligram. The Emperor said to Reik, "I should have comforted her, soothed her, but I couldn't. That's why my relationship with your mother became so strained." He walked over and patted Reik on the shoulder. Reik bowed slightly and called out softly. As the Emperor passed by him, he said, "Our war with the kingdom of Eladam is imminent. You must find a crown princess before the fighting begins." The Emperor left, leaving Reik standing there alone. Your blessing only works when a crown princess is by your side. Seeing him standing there lost in thought, the archbishop called softly, "Your Highness." Reik said to him, "It is the destiny of the holy knights to be drawn to the saintess. It's the same for me. Therefore, I will inevitably obey her, kneel before her, as if worshipping her fragility." Growing up, I saw knights go mad because they couldn't find their soulmate. There were even knights who destroyed themselves after those girls died, driven mad after their soulmate passed away. He thought, "Asterisk, I will not repeat their mistakes. I will tame her before the saintess." Asterisk, he declared his intentions. He instructed the archbishop, "So prepare for the spring ritual." Just then, the archbishop called out to him, "Your Highness, may I ask one last question? The barbarian you have locked in the dungeon still refuses to eat. What if he dies?" Reik replied, "People like him have long lifespans. He'll eat the bugs on the walls to stay alive. Don't worry." The archbishop hesitated, then asked, "But what is his name?" The man's pupils radiated a mysterious blue. Reik replied, "If I remember correctly, it's Viken." On a bright morning, at the edge of the forest, 2 priests were diligently picking herbs. "Celine, I want to ask you something." The blue-haired priest held a small white flower in front of Celine. "Why is this flower so hard to find?" Celine explained with a smile. "You see, mamola is a special herb that only grows in the sacred forest surrounding the holy cathedral." The blue-haired priest exclaimed, "A special herb?" In the luxurious room, Regria was enjoying a rather lavish meal. The saintess consumes food sprinkled with mamola powder or inhales its fragrance. This makes them feel more comfortable, and their bodies adapt more easily to the new environment. Most importantly, this herb severs the saintess's connection with the people of this world. Regria watched the priest talking. Regria began to mutter, mimicking words she knew, Eos, Alberta, Alan. Regria watched as the priests conversed in a language she couldn't understand. Perhaps the reason she was so calm was thanks to the mamola powder. Celine's eyes shone with adoration. How gentle she is. In Celine's eyes, Regria was like a goddess, her eyes like 1,000 stars in the sky. They say some people usually get angry, but she's not like that. Her eyes are so clear. Celine excitedly told the blue-haired priest, "I massage her hands, and she thanked me with her eyes. She might even choose me as her attending priest." From somewhere, the sound of gritted teeth could be heard. The person roared angrily, "Stop talking nonsense, Celine." Anita appeared suddenly, standing before Celine and the blue-haired priest, her brow furrowed. "Have you no shame?" she demanded. Leaning closer to Celine, her voice sharp, she continued, "Are you trying to use that foolish girl to climb the ranks?" Celine stammered, fear evident in her voice, "And no, that's not it." "What do you mean, that's not it?" Anita snarled, kicking over Celine's basket of herbs in a fit of pique. Her words dripped with venom. "We work ourselves to the bone here, and that woman doesn't even eat the food we prepare. Why should we serve her? Just because she's a god or a saint or whatever? Because we're the lowest of the low here." Celine stared at the scattered herbs, her voice trembling. "You shouldn't take your anger out on her, Anita. Gathering these herbs is our duty, and I'm sure she's tired too." Anita looked at her incredulously, unable to believe Celine was defending Regria. "What?" Anita suddenly grabbed Celine by the collar, lifting her slightly off the ground. "Hey, Celine," she sneered. "You stammer whenever you're scared. You're such a loser." A fool like you shouldn't even be in the presence of the holy offering. So just shut up, you idiot. A fool like you shouldn't even be in the presence of the holy offering. So just shut up, you idiot. Humiliated and afraid, Celine offered no resistance, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks as she endured Anita's tirade. As night fell, sheets of rain lashed against the holy cathedral, the sky above a canvas of inky blackness. Inside, the downpour did nothing to disturb the tranquility of the luxurious room. Eos pushed open the door and entered, her gaze drifting towards the bed. The slightly mounded covers hinted at the sleeping figure beneath. Eos covered her mouth with a hand, clearing her throat, about to speak, but paused as she heard her name uttered. Eos, Allen Alberta. Regria sat up in bed, her reddish-gold hair cascading down her slender back. She repeated the names, trying to discern which belonged to her attendant. Eos, she murmured. It is said that humans are highly adaptable creatures. Slightly startled, Eos nonetheless remained silent, attending to her duties. She moved towards the window, throwing it open to allow the morning light to flood the darkened room. There's no one here to teach me their language, Regria thought. Regria slipped out of bed, a soft sigh escaping her lips. But if I just sit here and listen to them, she continued, I can understand a few words. It looks like it's going to rain today. She walked over to the open window, breathing in the fresh air. It made her feel a little better, a momentary reprieve from her confinement. Finally, a bright smile, as radiant as the morning sun, bloomed on her face. How refreshing. Eos, standing respectfully beside her, spoke. You have been confined to this room for some time now, and I believe you must be feeling stifled. His Highness wishes to have tea with you in the Holy Garden today. I believe it would do you good, even if it rains. Regria listened absently, her mind elsewhere. I still don't understand what they're saying, she thought, but I'm glad I managed to convey something to them. She simply smiled in agreement. Taking the smile as assent, Eos clapped her hands, gesturing to the door. Comine, as this is your first time out of your chambers, His Highness wished to make it special for you. These are gowns from the latest collection of Belligram's most celebrated designers. Regria stared at the beautiful dresses, a gasp escaping her lips. Wait, all of these are for me. She rushed towards the clothing racks, her eyes sparkling as she took in the elaborate creations. This one even has a bow made in the shape of my face, and this one has a whole bunch of bows. Finally, her gaze landed on the most extravagant, eye-catching gown of all, a blue base with red floral patterns, glittering stars, and a long, flowing train of sheer fabric to fill the space behind her. Fortunately, Regria possessed enough aesthetic sense to know not to wear that one. Then, she noticed a rack completely covered by a sheet, but when it was unveiled, Regria's face flushed crimson. They were incredibly sheer nightgowns. Eos, oblivious to Regria's reaction, chirped excitedly. You can wear these for the spring ritual, but for now, you're going to have tea, so let's get you ready. Steering Regria away before she could examine them further, Eos began to prepare her. Why are there even undergarments here? Regria wondered, her mind still reeling. After Regria sat down, a designer wearing trendy, triangular glasses stood before her, humming a little tune. Turning, she excitedly presented a specially designed, deep green dress. How about this one? She asked. Regria stepped closer to admire the dress. It lacked ostentatious embellishments, simple yet elegant. Touching the fabric, feeling its texture, Regria thought, I like this one. I'll choose this one, she declared. Reik's sudden appearance shattered the peaceful atmosphere. He sat down, a hint of impatience in his voice. Hurry up, I don't want to waste my time. The designer, beads of sweat forming on her brow, replied, Yes, Your Highness. Regria glanced at Reik, the phrase echoing in her mind once more. They say humans are highly adaptable creatures. A moment later, the designer gasped dramatically. Oh my goodness, Regria looks so noble in this green dress. Indeed, every curve of Regria's figure was perfectly accentuated. At that moment, Regria thought, this man's intentions towards me are unclear, but right now, his voice sounds like music to my ears. I think I look beautiful, she murmured, feeling the familiar feminine pleasure of a beautiful dress. The designer, seizing the opportunity, rushed closer to Regria, gushing about the gown. From the outside, Evnita might not seem any different from other fabrics. She explained, but it's incredibly durable. It won't rip even if trampled upon. And the Might and Balm shop is the only one in the Empire that can create such a lovely green without using any harmful ingredients. Rahich, growing irritated with the designer's lengthy explanation, stepped closer to Regria, his gaze fixed on her. He hummed softly, then reached out, gently lifting a strand of Regria's hair. "I don't like it," he declared. "I prefer you a little more disheveled, dressed to impress." Yet receiving no compliment, Regria couldn't resist retorting, "It seems you don't like the dress, but you're the one who brought it here." Rahich, not wanting to argue, simply smiled. "You're right," he conceded. "I brought something special. Bring it in." "Yes, Your Highness," a servant replied, entering with a tray bearing several dog collars in a variety of colors. "They'll suit you well," Rahich stated. Regria followed Rahich's hand as he picked up a white collar. "Is that a dog leash?" She wondered. "Does Rahich have a dog? But I haven't seen any." As Rahich moved the collar towards her, Regria instinctively recoiled. He was quicker, placing a hand on her shoulder from behind. "With your pale complexion, which color would suit you best?" he mused. As Rahich leaned closer, a wave of fear washed over Regria. "Impossible," she thought. I knew he was crazy, but before she could resist, the collar was fastened tightly around her neck. Having achieved his objective, Rahich declared, "Now, everything is perfect." The object around her neck sent shivers down Regria's spine. "Impossible," she whispered. "No, I don't want to wear this. I won't. I'm a human, not a dog." She clutched at the collar, trying to tear it off. A tisk sounded from somewhere, stopping her in her tracks. She frantically looked around, searching for the source. Glancing at Eos and the designer, she thought, someone clicked their tongue. "Even they feel sorry for me." Rahich came to her side, taking her hand firmly in his. "Enough, Regria," he said, his voice possessive. "Don't hurt yourself. You belong to me." His words numbed Regria's mind. "Fine," she thought. "Let him do what he wants. I've already given up on this body. No one here will help me. Rahich, is the one with the power." Just as she resigned herself to her fate, the mysterious clicking sound echoed again in her mind. "TSK, how annoying. You should do the same to him, Regria." Rahich watched in surprise as Regria hunched over, clutching her head. "My head feels like it's splitting open," she groaned. She screamed in pain, clutching her head tighter. Eos rushed to her side, her voice filled with concern. "Miss Regria, what's wrong?" "My body is getting weak," Regria gasped, her body slumping backward. Fortunately, Rahich caught her in his strong arms, his face paling, bewildered by her sudden collapse. Through the gentle rain, the voice that had caused Regria to faint echoed again, calling her name. Regria. In her unconscious state, she found herself sheltered beneath a dome, surrounded by a vibrant array of hydrangeas. "Regria, Regria." The repeated calls roused her from her slumber. Regria sat up and looked around, bewildered. Just moments ago, she had been in the dressing room, and now she was outside. "Where am I?" she murmured, confusion clouding her mind. Eos approached, her voice laced with concern. "Miss Regria, are you awake?" Regria gasped Eos's name in surprise, while Eos, overcome with worry, began to cry. "You suddenly collapsed. I was so scared." Squeezing Regria's hand, Eos poured out a torrent of worried words, more than a mother hen fussing over her chick. "How are you feeling? I asked them to postpone the afternoon tea because of your condition, but His Highness insisted on proceeding. How could he? It's completely wrong." Regria, taking Eos's hand in hers, tried to soothe her. "Eos, I don't understand what you're saying. Please speak slowly." Eos continued to express her anxieties. "You don't know how worried I was. Please don't do that again," she pleaded, "or you'll be in big trouble." Regria could only sigh in frustration. "This is so frustrating. I wish I could speak the same language as everyone else." Regria's sigh only intensified Eos's anxiety. "What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" Without waiting for an explanation, Eos quickly ran off. "Wait here. I'll go get a doctor right away." Regria tried to call her back, but it was too late. She was already gone. Regria's attention was drawn to a commotion in the distance. "This is so annoying. Why do we have to pick these things in the rain? Look, I'm all wet." In the downpour, Anita and several other nuns were gathering herbs. Anita noticed the figure sitting beneath the dome. "What's that?" she muttered, her eyes narrowing as she saw Regria observing them. Rather than acknowledging Regria's striking beauty, Anita's mind fixated on something else. "Why is she wearing a dog collar?" A brown-haired maid beside her grumbled. "We're working, and that thing is just sitting there resting." I really hate her. Anita turned and called out, "Hey, Celine." She suddenly grabbed the back of Celine's neck and shoved her forcefully to the ground, a satisfied smirk spreading across her face. Celine, unsure what she had done wrong, stammered, "Anita, Anita." Anita looked towards Regria, wanting Celine to follow her gaze. "Do you see the thing wearing a dog collar? Look closely. It's a dog collar. If you want to be her servant, you have to be like her." Observing from under the dome, Regria felt a growing unease. What are those girls doing? Are they bullying that girl? Regria watched in horror as the girl was forced to bark like a dog. Anita's voice dripped with venom as she addressed Celine. "See, I told you. She doesn't care about you. So stop dreaming of being her servant. She's a stuttering thing." Anita then yanked Celine's hair sharply as a final warning. Celine whimpered weakly, pleading, "And Anita, please, please." Witnessing the brutal scene from beneath the dome, Regria's heart shattered. She wanted to intervene. "Stop. Enough. This is too cruel. She's human. She can't be a dog. I'm going crazy." Regria, her thoughts a chaotic jumble, brought her hand to the collar around her neck. Lost in thought, she pressed her lips together, the urge to rip the collar off growing stronger. "What is happening? Please tell me why they're treating people like dogs. Please tell me what's going on. If someone told me right now that I've been abducted by aliens, I would believe them." Regria, overwhelmed by confusion and distress, clutched her head in agony. "Please tell me, please." Curled up alone on the bench, she shivered, feeling the cold seep into her bones. "I can't just stand by and watch them do that." Regria's eyes snapped open. The voice returned. "Those people are too noisy." The voice seemed to urge her to get up. Regria's body moved involuntarily, her mind struggling to comprehend what was happening. My body is moving on its own." Step by step, Regria walked out into the open, her bare feet sinking into the rain-soaked grass. The heavy rain continued to fall, but it couldn't wash away the filth of Anita's words. She barked like a real dog. She didn't even stutter when she barked. Tugging on Celine's hair, Anita continued, "Celine, just wait and see what we have in store for you tonight. You should be prepared." Regria's voice, cutting through the rain, brought Anita's cruel taunts to an abrupt halt. Hands planted firmly on her hips, Regria commanded with an unexpected authority, "All of you, come here." "Why are you just standing there? Do you think I don't remember who you are?" Regria raised a hand, beckoning with her index finger as if summoning a dog. "Come here. Hurry up." Only the drumming of rain filled the tense silence. Regria's patience wore thin. Frowning, she snapped, "Hey, come here. Now." The nuns exchanged bewildered whispers. "Wait, she's acting like a lunatic, but she doesn't seem like Miss Beatrice. I thought she wasn't chosen by the god." Anita, grinding her teeth, let out an angry huff. She rounded on Celine. "Celine, tell me the truth. Did you lie to me?" Celine stammered in confusion. "Doubly, what?" Anita's voice rose. "You said Miss Beatrice was chosen by the god." Slap! The sharp crack of a hand against skin echoed through the rain. Regria had slapped Anita. A bright red mark bloomed on Anita's cheek as she stared back in disbelief. The action startled Regria as much as it did Anita. "What happened?" "My body moved on its own again." "Hey, you," Regria blurted out, a question forming in her mind. "Am I speaking this world's language?" Rubbing her temples, Regria addressed Celine. "You, get up off the ground and stand next to me." Celine scrambled to her feet, while Anita, still kneeling, trembled with rage. "Yes, Miss Regria. This is so unfair." Regria's brow furrowed at Anita's indignant words. "Why did I get slapped?" Anita began to justify her actions. "I was punishing Celine because she didn't do a good job. I'm in charge of the novice nuns, so I have the right to punish her." Regria gently tilted Anita's chin up, her gaze piercing. Her voice, soft yet menacing, sent a chill down Anita's spine. "Are you arguing with me? You're being very bold. Fine then. I'll tell His Highness everything." Anita gaped. "What?" Regria continued, her tone deceptively mild. "Why are you making that face? You said I was being unfair, so I'll tell His Highness everything I saw and everything you said." The realization of her precarious situation finally dawned on Anita. She dropped to her knees, trembling. No, please don't. I'm sorry, Mississippi. I'll be more careful. Please forgive me. I beg you." Regria ignored her pleas, leaning on her hand with a cold smile. "You should know your place." Suddenly, the strange, searing pain returned. Regria cried out, clutching her head in agony. Celine, standing beside her, reached out in concern. "Miss Regria? My head feels like it's going to explode. It hurts so much. I can't take it. I really can't take it." Regria gasped for breath, on the verge of collapse. Regria crumpled to the ground. Strange sounds approached. 3 figures, cloaked in black and masked, materialized out of the rain. The nuns cried out, "Intruders! There are intruders! Do you want to be punished? We are nuns. We must protect the god." Celine, her eyes fixed on Regria, stammered words of comfort. We're right here with you, Miss Regria. Why, you'll be safe." One of the figures, a scarred man, spoke in a flat voice. "No need for words. You nuns are not our target, so don't shed blood needlessly. Make your choice here." Anita, understanding their implication, knew better than to interfere. Anita straightened. "Let's go." The 2 nuns behind her gasped. "What?" "But Anita." Anita's reply was curt. "What? Are you willing to die protecting her?" Celine's voice arrested their movement. She remained steadfastly by Regria's side, her words a sharp rebuke to Anita. "You can't leave. You have a duty to protect Miss Regria." Anita scoffed. "Are you crazy?" The other 2 nuns sided with Anita, hurrying after her. Wait for me. Celine watched her friends go, helpless and disbelieving. "You cowards!" Mustering all her courage, Celine shouted at those who would abandon their duty to protect Regria for a personal grudge. One of the black-clad figures behind Celine reached out, drawing a dagger, ready to silence the defiant nun. Celine felt the chilling touch of cold steel against her skin. Clutching Regria tightly, she promised, "Don't worry, Miss Regria. I'll stay here and protect you." With that, Celine grabbed a nearby basket of herbs, wielding it as a makeshift weapon. She turned and swung it at the blue-haired figure's face. Regria's eyes flickered open, consciousness slowly returning. "I've been through so much in this life. I can endure anything, but this is too much." Regria watched as Celine repeatedly struck the blue-haired man's face with the basket. But such paltry physical attacks couldn't harm him. He seized Celine by the throat, lifting her into the air. Choking, Celine's eyes rolled back in her head as she lost consciousness. Regria wondered, "What do they want from me?" The blue-haired man tossed Celine aside like a broken doll. He drew his dagger again, turning his attention to his new target, Regria. Seeing the blade glinting in the rain, Regria realized they wanted her dead. Regria knelt on the ground, her body numb in the downpour. In her mind, she had already surrendered to death. "Maybe this is for the best. I'm so tired. Regria closed her eyes, bracing for the agonizing pain. But a clang rang out, the dagger knocked from its trajectory. It thudded into the ground beside her. Knowing she had been spared, Regria slowly lifted her head. She stared in astonishment at the powerful figure who had saved her. It was Rahich. Looking up at the towering figure protecting her, Regria breathed his name, Rahich. Rahich turned to look at the frail girl. He called her name, Regria, as if to make sure she was all right. Rahich glanced at the discarded dagger, its surface reflecting their 2 figures, then turned back to the black-clad figures, his voice a furious roar. "How dare you touch my woman?" He had staked his claim. Raindrops traced paths down Regria's beautiful face. "I don't know if this is a dream or reality now," she thought. "I don't know." Regria closed her eyes, a memory flashing through her mind. The fitting room, placing the pink necklace around Rahich's neck. "Now I know." Rahich, slightly taken aback by Regria's strange behavior, watched her. Regria smiled coquettishly at Rahich. "I thought pink would look better on you." Eos, bewildered by the scene unfolding before her, anxiously asked, "Your Highness, what's going on?" Regria, with a coy glance, asked, "Rahich, will you help me up?" Rahich, like a robot, helped Regria to her feet. "Thank you," Regria said, a dazzling smile illuminating her face. She then turned towards the designer, who was holding the tray of necklaces. After a moment of contemplation, she reached out to make her selection. Picking up the pink necklace, she asked curiously, "How does this necklace open?" Rahich leaned in close to Regria's ear. "Press both ends to detach it. To fasten it, do the same until you hear a click." Regria let out a small "oh," successfully opening the necklace. Then, with a sudden turn, she fastened it around Rahich's neck, the clasp clicking shut. Both the designer and Eos gasped, utterly shocked. "Oh my God!" Regria, admiring her handiwork, showered him with praise. "I knew pink would suit you." Rahich remained silent, his expression a mixture of complex emotions, avoiding Regria's gaze. The corner of Regria's lips twitched upwards. "It really suits you. You're a good doggy." Regria jolted awake. She was back in her room, somehow returned after collapsing in the rain. Looking outside, she saw the rain was still pouring down. What happened, she wondered aloud. Am I still alive? She heard a rustling sound behind her. Turning, she saw Rahich fast asleep. She studied his handsome face, his bronze skin, his straight nose, his long, curled eyelashes. Every feature of Rahich's face was as beautiful as a sculpted masterpiece. But what caught Regria's attention even more was the pink necklace still adorning his neck. Lost in thought, Regria questioned, "Did he really save my life?" Her fingers, as if possessed by a will of their own, reached out and gently brushed against the pink necklace resting on Rahich's throat. Regria froze, realizing the man beneath her had stirred. Rahich propped himself up, running a hand through his hair, and looked at her questioningly. "Are you awake?" Regria ducked her head, a blush creeping up her cheeks. She offered no reply. The two remained on the bed, locked in a silent, protracted gaze. Rahich broke the silence. "You look shocked, poor thing." Regria cut him off. "What happened?" "I don't understand anything." "What on earth happened?" Rahich sat up, his gaze piercing. "Funny, you ask what happened? I like to ask you the same question. How can you speak our language? What happened to you?" At his questions, panic flooded Regria, and tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know. Suddenly, my head hurt like it was splitting open. I heard a strange voice, and then my body moved on its own, and then, seeing her distress, he grabbed her hand and pulled her down onto the bed, causing her to cry out in surprise. Then Rahich closed his eyes. "Forget it. Nothing will change after tonight. I'll take care of everything." She listened quietly, watching him, seeing her silence. Rahich placed a hand on her shoulder and pulled her closer, urging her to sleep. Regria blushed, stammering, "What are you doing?" Rahich replied, "You're drenched from the rain. You're freezing." He looked down at her and then held her tighter. Stroking her hair, he said, "So I'm just trying to warm you up. Don't think too much. No one here will harm you. Just relax and go to sleep." Observing Rahich's actions, she thought, "He seems a bit strange sometimes, a bit crazy, but his hands aren't wandering to my chest or anything. So maybe he isn't a bad person." She remembered the nightgowns. Consoling herself, well, maybe those revealing lingerie sets were for other women. Regria continued her inner monologue. "I don't know when the last time I slept with someone was." Then she spoke aloud. "Thank you for saving me today." Seeing her drift off to sleep, Rahich opened his eyes, a silent smile playing on his lips as he watched her. Then, holding her close, he too closed his eyes and succumbed to sleep. The night wore on. Late into the night, moonlight spilled into her room, bathing her bed in its silvery glow. She now slept alone. As she slept, voices drifted in from outside. The QRS gang's body collectors had left a message regarding compensation for the dead assassins. "If we don't pay, they'll pester us to death. Whatever they want, just give it to them." After listening, Eos remarked, "They really know how to run a business." She recalled the moment the assassin raised his dagger, poised to strike Regria down. They dared to demand compensation after attempting to assassinate Miss Regria. After a moment of reflection, Eos sighed and asked, "How dare they hold us responsible for the deaths of those assassins?" Rahich removed the necklace he was wearing. Any assassin training organization operates in the shadows, but the QRS operates so brazenly because their current leader is only concerned with lining his pockets. He thought of another individual. He's the type who would rummage through a garbage heap for a copper coin. That bastard would never do anything that doesn't benefit him. Eos took the necklace from his hand, asking, "Do you know who the leader of that gang is?" Rahich replied, "The mastermind behind hiring the assassins could only be one of the neutral nobles." Eos gasped. "What?" Rahich explained, "Whether it's the Empress's faction, led by me, or the neutral faction, led by Duke Romer of Summerhedge, or the Duke's faction, led by my uncle, Grand Duke Masquerade, they all want to recruit as many nobles as possible to their side, building their power and influence." Initially, Duke Romer intended to use his daughter to expand the neutral faction's power. She had no intention of siding with either the Duke's faction or the Empress's faction. That's why she originally planned to marry her daughter to a noble from the neutral faction. Many people didn't want Duke Romer's daughter to become the crown princess. This really messed up her future plans. Indeed, regardless of who was behind the assassination attempt, it was all to prevent this from happening. Eos spread rumors that people from the Duke's faction were the masterminds behind it. Although the Grand Duke didn't have many supporters and remained in armed neutrality, he still had a motive to target Regria. Reik thought, once the rumors spread widely, the nobles would start acting in their own interests, and the culprit, being one of them, would be exposed. We must remove the firewood under the pot as soon as possible. The next day, the archbishop lowered his head and said loudly, "Your Highness, please punish me." Reik's face darkened as he looked down at the archbishop. "I can't believe something like this happened just days before the holy water ceremony." Hearing this, the archbishop dared not look up, still keeping his head lowered. "It's my fault, Your Highness." Reik walked past him. "You specialize in deceiving people with money, and now you're dead. No wonder you're scared to death." Then Reik glared furiously at the archbishop, veins bulging in his temples. If the future crown princess were to be assassinated in a holy place, who would take responsibility in the future? Hearing his words, the archbishop trembled with fear. Then, while weeping, he repeated, "It's my fault, Your Highness. I will strengthen the security around the holy grounds and ensure that no one can ever intrude again." Reik sat down in chair. "Was there any damage to the temple?" The archbishop replied, No trainee priests were killed." Hearing this, he pondered for a moment. So they didn't kill anyone needlessly, just like the QRS. However, those priests who ran away instead of protecting the future crown princess will be punished accordingly. He recalled that some priests had indeed fled. Rahich continued, "I heard that a woman was disrespectful to Regria. Is this true?" The archbishop replied, "Yes, her name is Anita. She manages the entire trainee priest team and has excellent grades. But her future will be completely blocked. Oh, and she also lied excessively during the interrogation to protect herself." After listening, Reik asked, "Lied?" The archbishop recounted. She said that the future crown princess could speak Belligram fluently and slapped her hard. Reik was slightly surprised. Regria slapped her. The archbishop continued. She said that Miss Regria acted like Lady Beatrice. Romer. Reik pondered this. He recalled the time when he appeared behind Beatrice, who was holding his necklace, and she naturally put it around his neck. The more Reik thought about it, the more puzzled he became. Then he said, "Don't punish any of the priests who ran away that day. Let it go." The archbishop was surprised by his words and asked again, "What?" Reik slowly rose from his chair. "There must be a reason for their disrespectful behavior. I will send someone to follow them, and I will also meet with Duke Romer secretly. I will return before the ceremony begins. So until then, make sure Regria doesn't leave her room." The archbishop replied, "As you command. Have a safe trip, Your Highness." Before leaving, he turned his head. "Oh, one more thing. Scatter all of your Mamyra powder into that stream." The archbishop asked, "All of it?" He countered, "Is there a problem?" The archbishop hesitated before replying, "No, it's just a bit expensive." The archbishop thought 10 kilograms of Mamyra powder cost 10 gold coins. Suddenly, as he was thinking, his eyes widened. As Rahich pointed his sword at him, he asked angrily, "Is it more precious than your life?" The archbishop, terrified, started to cry and replied with a laugh, "Of course, we will provide the Mamyra for free, haha." A few mornings later, at the spring banquet, Eos and the designer walked in excitedly. "Today's an important day, Miss Regria." Regria turned and asked her. Eos spoke first. "Congratulations on successfully reaching the day of the holy water ceremony." The designer also congratulated her. "Congratulations." Regria stepped forward. "What's the holy water ceremony?" Eos didn't answer, instead continuing, "Prince Rahich will be here soon. Quickly prepare the lady's attire." The designer replied, "Yes, sir." She continued to ask, "Wait, Eos, hold on. I don't know what you're talking about. What ceremony is this?" But before she could get an answer, someone interrupted. "The attire is ready." Regria was too stunned to speak. Eos said with satisfaction, "It's finally time for you to wear the ceremonial dress." As we mentioned before, Rahich arrived at Regria's residence after finishing his business. Rahich asked the steward beside him, "Hey, how are the preparations for the holy water ceremony going?" "Your Highness, it's in the final stages. Once Miss Regria arrives at the palace, she will be taken to spring." Suddenly, a scream came from up ahead. "Don't come near here." The scream came from Regria's room. "Do you think I dare wear these things?" The two people outside were startled. Inside, the maids were trying to persuade Regria. "What's the use of resisting now, Miss Regria? You have to wear them before His Highness arrives." "No, I've already been humiliated enough." Regria huddled up, displeasure evident in her eyes. She sat on the bed, hugging a pillow, glaring at the maids who approached her. Reik suddenly walked in. Eos, why is it so chaotic? The maids were stunned. Your Highness. They hadn't expected him to appear so suddenly. Regria glanced at the prince and demanded, Reik, what's going on? Why are you making me wear that gaudy lingerie? The prince sighed. Huh. He gestured to the steward. You cried in my arms because of those clothes, but it seems I've spoiled you. The steward understood and took out a colorful bottle from his pocket. Seeing this, Regria trembled. She decided to take a risk and feign a pitiful voice. Back then, I thought you were a good person, but I didn't expect you to disappoint someone so much. Sadness was clearly written all over Regria's face. The prince wasn't moved by her appearance. He approached Regria. It's a shame. I thought everyone was being nice to you. If they showed any disrespect, tell me, and I'll kick them all out. Hearing this, Regria trembled with anger and shouted, Don't make me laugh. Everyone here is nice except for you. If you want to kick someone out, why don't you kick yourself out? The prince took out the bottle he'd received from the steward. I'm afraid that's impossible. Reik raised his hand and sprayed the medicine in front of Regria. A fragrant scent drifted out. Regria was about to say something when she suddenly felt extremely tired and fainted in Reik's arms. He chuckled. See? No one can kick me out. Reik said to the servants, You don't need to come to the palace. I'll take the crown princess to the spring myself. As you command, Your Highness. Regria fainted, unaware of what she would face next. After a while, the scene shifted to the so-called Spring of God. Regria was lying on the stone floor. She gradually regained consciousness. Regria sat up, supporting herself. Where am I? Regria looked up and around, surrounded by exquisite architecture. She was immersed in admiration when a voice came from behind her. This place is called the Holy Spring. Reik walked out. You can immerse yourself in the spring water and wash away all your sins. Regria was startled. Wash away whose sins? Not yours, of course. Mine as well. You pervert. No wonder you made me wear those flimsy clothes. So you've been plotting to do this to me. Calm down, Regria. You can glare at me all you want, but it doesn't scare me. Regria grew angrier and stood up abruptly. Of course not. Do whatever you want. I'm leaving. But before she could take a few steps, she felt her legs weaken. Luckily, Reik caught her in time, pulling her into his arms. You might not be able to move for a while, so let you what? How can I trust you? It's best not to resist. It won't do you any good. The prince suddenly tightened his arms, startling Regria. She looked up at the prince, who said with a playful expression, Your stubborn attitude only excites me more. Hey, did you hear that? The prince whispered in Regria's ear. How do you say it in your Korean? I mean the phrase, You've captured my heart. Hearing his cheesy words, Regria pushed him away. Wait, how can you speak Korean? Have you been lying to me this whole time? Reik replied cheerfully, I didn't lie to you. Then he picked Regria up. Put me down. Well, no, I never said I didn't understand Korean. The crown prince carried Regria into the water. I had my reasons for not revealing that I could understand her sacred language, which is Korean. Everyone is assessed based on how many languages they can speak and their reactions in these situations. They are matched with a holy knight of the corresponding rank. But since you were chosen as the crown princess, naturally, we had to make this clear to you. The two jumped into the spring, and Reik put Regria down. Flowers, like points of light and a shimmering radiance, created an unbelievably beautiful scene. Regria stared, transfixed. Seeing her like this, Reik said, It seems you've calmed down. They also sprinkled Mamira powder in this stream. Regria asked indifferently, Please be honest with me from now on. I've been wondering, did you kidnap me? Or did my mother make you do this? Hearing this, the crown prince shook his head. Oh, does it seem that way? Regria asked with a pitiful expression. Reik, I don't know anything about this place. What are you talking about? Well, all right, I suppose it's time to let you in on the truth. Beating around the bush is just a waste of time. What are you trying to say? Your red hair. It looks beautiful. Don't change the subject, and my hair isn't red. My original hair color is black. By the way, I also wanted to ask what you did to my hair. The crown prince looked at Regria. I won't let you look in a mirror. Go compare yourself, Regria. This sounded suspicious. You're curious, aren't you? You'll find out if you just look in the mirror. But you should know, the mirror is placed in the very center of the stream, where it's deep. It seems this water is holy water, as there doesn't seem to be any reflection. Hearing this, Regria hesitated. The crown prince stepped forward and held her hand. You can't even move your body, so why not ask me for help? Rahich wrapped his left arm around her waist and placed his right hand on her thigh. If you want, I can take you to the mirror. Regria turned and asked, are you trying to make me beg you for help? Not beg. More like if you snuggle up to me and let me take you there, I might reconsider. Not wanting to waste any more breath on him. Regria pushed him away and turned around resolutely. You better be waiting by the mirror. Then she jumped into the water and disappeared, leaving Rahich completely stunned, speechless. Regria dove into the stream. While diving, Regria suddenly froze. She thought, good heavens, is this really a stream? It's so deep. I can't see the bottom. What should I do? I didn't expect to go down there alone. Looking at the dark abyss before her. If there's something terrifying down there, death is surely waiting for me. Suddenly, a voice called out, hey, Regria. A light shone from below. It's okay if I can't do it. I just need to ask Rahich for help. After all you can do is ask others for help, right? Hearing these words, Regria became resolute. No, I won't ask Rahich for help again. I won't rely on him anymore. I won't let him manipulate me again. The voice urging her on was a woman's. Regria reached the bottom and found the mirror. A voice spoke. Regria, a girl who looked exactly like Regria, was speaking. You know, I think I really like you. My name is Beatrice Rummel. How does it feel to possess the body of one of the most beautiful people in the Empire? Regria, seeing the girl with the unfamiliar face in the mirror, was dumbfounded. What in the world is going on? Is this a dream? Why do I have this face in the mirror? Regria suddenly covered her mouth. Oh, she was running out of air. She thought, I can't breathe. I've been here too long. If I don't get back to the surface soon, I'll suddenly... A hand reached out from the mirror and tightly grasped one of Regria's hands. A slender hand grabbed her hand and pulled her to a place that looked quite grand. Regria, having just escaped death, coughed and saw the girl who looked exactly like her say, coughing up the water will make you feel better. It was painful, wasn't it? But I'm glad you didn't ask Rahich to save you. Beatrice looked down at Regria with a puzzled expression. After a while, when Regria felt better, she asked, where am I? Beatrice answered honestly, this is my inner world. To be more precise, it's the body world of the possessed. Huh, so you're the original owner of this body. That's right. Beatrice smiled at Regria. I'm Beatrice Rummel. It seems we've met before, haven't we? Regria looked at the girl in front of her. So you were the one controlling this body before? Beatrice chuckled. I know I should have held on a little longer, but I really couldn't. I know what you're thinking. You must have a ton of questions swirling in your head, right? Well, I'll answer them all. But first, let me decorate this boring world. Come, sit here. Beatrice pointed to an empty space in front of her, leaving Regria perplexed. Sit where? There's nothing there. Suddenly, everything vibrated, startling Regria. But what surprised her even more was that a table laden with tempting desserts and snacks appeared before her. Regria's eyes widened. Wow, this isn't a dream, is it? What, a little surprised? Like I said, you're possessing my body. Regria quickly asked, but if I'm in your body, what happened to my original body? Beatrice, sitting in a chair, replied, oh, I'm not sure. Beatrice, sipping her tea, continued, but there's no reason for you to go back to that original body, is there? I've seen all your memories. Beatrice looked at Regria with sharp eyes. Even if you go back, no one will be waiting for you. Because just like you, I have no reason to go back. Regria quickly defended herself. That's not what I meant. I asked about my old body, not because I want to go back. I just don't understand how I woke up in someone else's body. Beatrice explained, asking how won't get you anywhere. The more you ask that question, the bigger the headache it becomes. You just need to know that sacrifices must undergo 1,000 days of prayer until death, and as a result, you were summoned to this world. But I really don't know what happened today. Regria shuddered and quickly poured herself a cup of tea. As soon as she took a sip, she felt something was off. She looked at the teacup in front of her. Why is there no taste? Regria knocked on the table, but she couldn't hear any sound. Beatrice, lost in her thoughts, suddenly jumped up in a panic. Did those damn bastards banish me because it was too crowded? She excitedly approached Regria. If you can't go back to your old world, you can stay here. That way, you won't have to see your parents and that little sister again. You'll be free from their torment. More importantly, you can achieve your wish here, too. Regria asked, and what's that? Beatrice leaned close to her face and said, it's freedom. Isn't that what you wanted? To live the rest of your life. Free. Live out the rest of your days. Beatrice pulled Regria to her feet. Smiling, Beatrice said, come with me. She led Regria into a dark room. Clatter. Regria looked at the thing in front of her, unsure what it was. This is my gift to you. Before her was a strangely tangled ball of string. A sense of unease rose in Regria's heart. What is that thing? Beatrice explained. It's that idiot's twisted soul. Beatrice picked up the string. From now on, you're going to slowly unravel each and every thread of that jerk's soul. One at a time, Regria exclaimed. I have to unravel all of this. Beatrice calmly whispered, give it a try. Regria picked up the string, feeling helpless as she looked at the enormous tangle. Suddenly, the string glowed, and the end of the string turned to dust and disappeared. Beatrice rejoiced. I knew you could do it on your first try. But wait, why should I unravel his soul? She turned to Regria. Once you unravel it, he'll calm down and won't act so crazy. And the more you unravel, the more dependent he'll become on you. What do you mean? I mean, when it's complete, he'll be kneeling at your feet and crying. I really wish I could see that moment. I wonder what that will look like. Regria was speechless. You call me here just to make me unravel this. That's right. You catch on quick. Regria asked, puzzled. Then why don't you do it yourself? You have to understand, only a saint can enter a paladin's inner world. I can only see this string because you're here. Beatrice cheerfully approached Regria. So, while I was conscious, I was learning everything about how to be a crown princess. Study how to be a crown princess by day, and I'll help you practice that theory at night. Regria was shocked. What are you talking about? Crown princess? Yes, you're about to become one. Regria cried out, no way. I don't want to. Why should I become the crown princess? I don't want to become like that. Beatrice groaned, holding her head. Oh, Regria, my poor little Regria. I'm giving you precious advice, so don't be silly and listen to me. From now on, never say you don't want to be the crown princess. Beatrice pointed at Regria's face. More accurately, never think that way again. Why? Beatrice turned away. I'll tell you why. The moment you refuse the position of crown princess, they'll kill you, my naive Regria. Regria's thoughts were indeed simple. From the moment she was given her mission, she had to bear it for life. If she resisted, she was bound to die. Beatrice implanted these words into Regria's head. They just figure, if they lose a saint, they'll sell you off as a high-class slave. Beatrice looked meaningfully at Regria, cupping her face and whispering, now that you know, do you still dare refuse to be the crown princess? Regria was speechless. Regria turned away. But it's such an important position, it's too much for me. And the pressure is a lot too. Beatrice chuckled. If only you were my sister. What? How about this? You can pretend to be the crown princess until you find a way to escape. What do you mean? I mean, since you've already taken over my body, you should at least compensate me. Let this precious body become that filthy paladin's plaything. Beatrice shed tears sadly. Regria understood and replied, I'm sorry, it's not even my body, and I'm acting like this. See, I knew we'd become allies. Now show me. Regria looked at Beatrice expectantly. Beatrice explained, not only men should stand tall, but women should also lift their chins, stick out their chests like this. You must be confident and have self-esteem so they won't look down on you. You also have to use your power to recruit people to your escape faction. Make the most of what you have, even if they are your friends. Even friends. That's right, especially that poet, Ian Severick. Remember that name. He's my friend, but also a true warrior. He hates this holy sacrifice system. So he might be angry at you at first, but don't panic. Be strong and tell him this. Beatrice adopted a pitiful expression, her eyes brimming with tears. I can't believe you dare be so aggressive toward a frail lady like myself. Do you even call yourself a knight? Regria repeated. I can't believe you dare be so aggressive towards a frail lady like myself. Do you even call yourself a knight? Exactly. Perfect. Beatrice took Regria's hand. Now let's go. They walked on what appeared to be small stars. No matter who you were before, as long as you're in my body, you can do whatever you want. Laugh like a madwoman. Live a dazzlingly luxurious life, understand? Let's stop here for today. If you stay here too long, your body won't be able to handle it. Time is running out. Hurry. She led Regria to a door. Regria looked at Beatrice and opened the door, but she was surprised to find she couldn't see anything inside, only darkness. Hesitantly, Regria said, What? I can't see anything. Beatrice, not wanting her to linger, reached out. Regria was shoved into the dark doorway. She screamed, Ah! Beatrice, her face expressionless, uttered her final words to Regria before she departed. When you want to know the rest, I'll tell you the sickening truth of this world. Beatrice appeared, her eyes vacant. I have my reasons for hating this life, too. Regria's vision blurred. Regria floated in the sacred stream. She was unconscious from the terror she had just experienced. Suddenly, Regria opened her eyes. A hand reached out and grabbed her, pulling her out of the water. Coughing, Regria found herself in the crown prince's arms. Rahich anxiously stroked Regria's hair. He held her tightly, asking with concern, "Are you awake? Come on, spit out the water." Rahich gently patted her back, saying softly, "You're so foolish. If I hadn't saved you, you would have died, you know." The crown prince handed Regria a towel. She sat on the ground, seemingly without strength. The crown prince picked up a strawberry. Rahich asked her, "Do you really regret knowing the truth?" Regria didn't speak. She disliked the strange taste of the strawberry. Hearing this, Rahich was puzzled. But you haven't even tasted it yet." "No, I'm talking about the water in that stream. Try it, it tastes awful." Rahich said, "Let me get this straight. You almost drowned at the bottom of the stream looking for a mirror, and you're complaining about the taste of the water?" Regria moved closer to the crown prince, speaking suspiciously. "This tastes exactly like the spice Eos sprinkled on my food. Tell me the truth. What did you put in my food? Was it bath salts?" Regria covered her mouth, feeling nauseous. Not bath salts. It's Mamira powder. Inhaling or consuming Mamira powder reduces stress by altering the surrounding environment, making one less wary of those around them. Understanding its effects, Regria said angrily, "You drugged me, you bastard. How dare you call me a bastard? It was hard enough for me to bring you food, okay?" Regria's blue eyes widened, looking at Rahich. "Oh, I looked in a mirror like you said. So tell me, where am I?" "This is a sacred land ruled by the Belligram dynasty. People call it neutral ground. It's where the first saint disappeared from the holy nation. That's why a sanctuary was built in this place to praise this legend. We call this place your holy nation." The crown prince picked up a strawberry and put it in his mouth. "You just need to know this place is not the same as your world." "So you mean I'm from another world and only my soul came here?" "That's right. According to historical records, at least 1862 saints have come to this world, at least one or two appearing each year. They're not like you. You're the only saint summoned to our world this generation. The other saints weren't treated like this." "So you mean because I'm Beatrice?" "Who is she?" "She is the saint's vessel. The body you now inhabit is called the saint's vessel. The purpose of the saint's vessel system is to bring saints to this world. Participants are volunteers who offer their bodies willingly, and only one person per generation is summoned through the ritual. They prepare these vessels, and the vessels simply await the saint's choice." Regria realized something odd in the crown prince's words. "Wait, chosen. What does that mean?" Rahich leaned closer to answer. "Yes, you chose Beatrice's body. You're quiet, so I guess you don't have any more questions." Regria immediately asked, "What about you? If Beatrice is my vessel, then what are you to me?" The crown prince glanced at Regria, picking up another strawberry. "That depends on your choice. I could be the crown princess's husband, respected and supported by the people, or just a bastard you detest." Rahich offered the strawberry to Regria. Looking at it, a cold sweat broke out on Regria's skin. I didn't realize I was just a lab rat in his eyes. Every word he says makes me sick. But poor thing, there's one thing you don't know. I'm the one who can unravel the chaos within you. Regria snatched the strawberry from Raika's hand, startling him. "With these very hands, Beatrice told me that when I'm finished, you'll be kneeling at my feet." The crown prince licked his hand delicately. Regria brought the strawberry to her lips. "On that note, I suppose I'm looking forward to that moment too, Crown Prince Rahich." A moment later, by the sacred stream, the crown prince stared at Regria, watching her bite into the strawberry he had just been holding. Rahich raised his voice. "Are you defying my ascension to the throne?" The strawberry fell to the ground. Regria found herself pinned beneath the crown prince, staring up at him in bewilderment. Rahich looked down at Regria sternly. "They say saints often choose vessels compatible with their own bodies." He reached out a hand. "The body you occupy belonged to an arrogant bitch who always looked down on those around her like insects beneath her feet." He tightened his grip on Regria's neck. She only cared about herself. Makes me want to strangle her." He released his grip. Your pulse seems stable. Aren't you afraid?" Regria responded with a smile. "Why would I be afraid when you won't do anything to me?" The crown prince's pride swelled at the provocation. "Are you sure about that?" Then Rahich began to roughly grope Regria. Regria, her body being pawed over, protested. "What are you doing? Your hands. Get off." She flailed angrily. "Stop it," the crown prince said, wounded. "I've raised several monsters in the palace. I used to be much more cruel. Do you know why they treat me as their true master? Reik seemed genuinely angry, sparks of electricity crackling around him. It's not because I'm the crown prince, and it's not because I'm far more powerful than them. Today, I'll show you that I am your true master. With that, Reik started to tear at Regria's clothes. Tears welled in her eyes. No, I don't want to be this guy's plaything. What should I do? What do I do now? Regria recalled Beatrice's teachings. A sudden confidence filled her. I must be confident, dignified. I have to straighten my back, hold my head high, and show no fear. The crown prince, seeing Regria's slight apprehension, was in high spirits. Suddenly, a hand reached out and caressed the crown prince's cheek. Regria looked at him, her voice laced with affection. I have something to tell you, too. You look so handsome and dashing. Not only that, but you're also special. Not because you're rich, but because of your noble status. You think you have it all, right? But think again, that's all you have. Regria sat up. The man had finally stopped. Rahich, not understanding her meaning, asked, "What do you mean?" "I'm just saying, in my world, people usually date first, then the man proposes to the woman, and after that they get married. So, Regria spoke earnestly. Then why do nobles have to be forced into marriage? Huh, so you're saying we should court each other like in your world? You think I actually care? Oh, I don't expect you to care. I just want to ask you one thing. Please be honest with me. Besides your handsome looks, wealth, and status, what else do you have? Are you confident you can capture my heart without those things?" The crown prince replied haughtily, "Preposterous. What more do you need besides my status and wealth? Certainly, I also need you to respect me." "Respect you?" Reik asked bluntly. Regria continued, "In my world, women are constantly rejected and oppressed, so I can't live with a man who doesn't even understand respect." The crown prince closed his eyes. "But do you have any other choice, Regria?" Regria answered firmly, "Why not? I can escape." His lips curled. "Your soul is from a completely different world, and you think you can escape?" Reik stepped closer to Regria. "I'm the only one who can help you." Hearing this, Regria retorted, "Actually, there are people who can help me, like Beatrice." At her words, the crown prince fell silent, his face turning deadly serious. Reik's gaze turned frightening, pinning Regria with a look that made her heart pound. From somewhere, Beatrice's voice echoed, "If this continues, he'll gain the upper hand." Regria thought, hearing the voice, "Is that Beatrice?" "Don't avoid his gaze, Regria." Following Beatrice's instruction, Regria looked directly into his eyes. Beatrice reminded her, "You shouldn't act like prey in front of a predator. Remember what I told you? It's not just men who should straighten their backs. The more afraid you are, the more you have to raise your standards, straighten your chest." Regria summoned all her courage and looked at the crown prince, determination filling her eyes. Seeing her like this, the crown prince's anger seemed to dissipate. "Ah, Phoenix, I'll do as you wish." Regria was stunned. The crown prince continued, "I will respect you as you wish, my future crown princess." Seeing his attitude change so quickly, Regria responded flustered, "You don't have to talk to me in that tone. It makes me uncomfortable." Suddenly, Regria was swept into his arms. The crown prince held her, murmuring, "Such a difficult person." Regria frowned. "I can walk myself. The stairs are cold, just like your body." Holding her, Reik said, "Now you need to become a perfect crown princess, so tutors will come to educate you. You'll be moving to a new bedroom as well, all right? And I must warn you, never mention another man's name in front of me again." Regria looked at him, a flicker of sadness in his eyes, her own face slowly going blank. Though a little boisterous, the sacred water ritual had successfully come to an end. A month passed, and winter arrived. During this time, Regria learned a great deal. She became more elegant and fashionable. Regria studied the Belligram's politics, culture, economy, and diplomacy. She also learned about the royal knights. Regria was now a far cry from her former self, a truly elegant and fashionable lady. The books said the paladin's power was immense, comparable to superheroes on Earth. This was why Belligram had become so powerful. However, these knights paid a price for their strength, experiencing bouts of madness. Each paladin had a different inner world, but they all shared one thing in common. When these individuals went mad, their inner worlds gradually turned pitch black, devoid of any light. But a saint could help a paladin regain their sanity, thanks to an ability called telepathy. So, if a saint was paired with a paladin, she could focus on purifying that one night. Otherwise, she could also purify many other paladins, but none would be fully cleansed. Listening to the people around her talk, Regria Regria responded after learning about the paladins and their condition. Suddenly, a shout came from outside the door. Frantic screams echoed. "You can't go in there. He can't hear you. Damn it, stop him." Reik's frequent bouts of madness made Regria clutch her head. She decided she would never pair with Reik. Panic rippled through the attendants. They closed ranks around Regria, shielding her protectively. A pair of feet slowly stepped into the room. A white-haired man stepped forward, placing himself between Regria and the doorway. "What's going on?" Regria looked at the man before her, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "Why is it you, sir?" "Padre Ivan Severek." Regria gasped. In contrast to Regria's surprised expression, a distinct look of disappointment clouded Padre's face. At that moment, Beatrice's voice chimed in. "That's right, this is Padre Ivan Severek, the one I mentioned to you before." Despite the servant's attempts to block him, Padre continued to approach Regria. Then, in a low voice, Padre uttered the name Beatrice. Eos immediately corrected him. "No, that is Miss Regria, the future crown princess, standing before you. Please be mindful of your conduct." Padre bristled at Eos's words. "I merely came to see the one who stole the body of my only friend," Padre retorted, his voice laced with resentment. Eos continued, his tone firm. "This is a restricted area. His Highness, the Crown Prince, will return with his confidants after the banquet tomorrow. You should request permission from His Highness, then to see Miss Regria." Knowing this, Beatrice spoke to Regria. "Rahich isn't here, so take this opportunity to speak with Padre privately." Regria hesitated, her lips pressed together in a thin line. But Beatrice urged her, "No matter what, you must bring him to your side, Regria." Eos, having no other choice, tried to intervene again. "Mr. Padre," but Regria's words cut him off. "Could you give me some private time to speak with Mr. Padre? I would like to have a conversation with him." Eos looked at her, astonished. "What?" But Regria reassured him calmly. "It will be quick, I promise." Then, turning to Padre, she offered him a bright smile. "Right, Mr. Padre." Padre remained silent, letting Regria take the lead. Eos watched the two of them with disapproval, but ultimately, he obeyed and stepped out, leaving Regria and Padre alone. Regria spoke first. "I understand why you're acting this way, Padre." Clutching her cloak, Regria avoided Padre's gaze. "In your eyes, I'm probably an uninvited guest, someone who stole the body of your precious friend." Padre's voice was sharp. "Don't call me Padre, as if we're close." Regria sighed, accepting his rebuke. "All right, Mr. Padre. So what I wanted to say is, this might be difficult to believe, but I've met Beatrice's soul." Padre stared at Regria, his eyes wide with surprise. "What did you just say?" Regria continued, her voice gentle. "I really have met Beatrice. Please believe me." Padre scoffed, disbelief and anger warring on his face. "But the saint's consciousness cannot coexist with the vessel's. Did you think I wouldn't know that?" But Regria tried to hold him there, wanting to say more, but Padre turned to leave. "I shouldn't have come here." Without another word, Padre brushed past her, his cloak swirling around him. "Mr. Padre," Regria called out after him. Meanwhile, Beatrice was berating Padre. "Ag, you stubborn fool," Regria asked, a note of desperation in her voice. "What should I do, Beatrice?" Beatrice, left with no other choice, instructed Regria to use her last resort. "Damn it, then tell him what I said." Summoning all her courage, Regria shouted after the retreating figure, "Hey, do you really think I want to marry someone like that?" Padre finally stopped, turned to look back at Regria, a flicker of something akin to pain in his eyes. Regria spoke simply. "Beatrice told me to say that." A short, humorless laugh escaped Padre's lips. "Beatrice would indeed say that if I confessed my feelings to her." Regria pressed on. "But that's not all. So, Padre, Beatrice told me a lot about you. I know the two of you were childhood friends, and your parents arranged for you to be engaged. I also heard that you were inseparable since you were young." Padre listened silently as Regria spoke, his emotions clearly churning within him. Stepping closer, Regria continued, "Beatrice told me that back then, you were quite weak and timid, always being bullied by your friends. She saved you numerous times from those who tormented you. So it's hard for me to imagine that person being you now." Finally looking up at Padre, Regria's eyes widened slightly. "Is he crying?" Tears were tracking down the handsome young man's cheeks. Regria flustered slightly. Oh no, I didn't mean to make him cry. This man seems cold on the outside, but maybe he truly loved Beatrice. Regria's hand reached out, almost of its own accord, to wipe the tears from the corner of Padre's eye. Padre, startled back to awareness, looked at the hand brushing away his tears, and then, as if burned, flinched and pulled away. Stop! His gaze fixed on the slender hand, now faintly marked with the moisture from his own eyes. A heavy silence fell between them, as if the world itself had paused. Regria, as stunned as Padre, froze. Regria, a voice called out, pulling her back to the present. I'm not even surprised anymore, Regria replied. Where am I now? Beatrice's voice responded. This is Padre's inner world. His inner world, Regria echoed, her voice laced with astonishment. Before her stretched a landscape cloaked in ice and snow, dominated by a towering, imposing ice castle. Beatrice's voice took on a chiding tone. Hey, you idiot. You just wiped someone's tears, and now you're crying. Once you connect to someone's inner world, you can't disconnect. Otherwise, you'll both lose your minds, and then we're screwed. Regria simply complained, so cold, so cold. Looking around, Regria commented, unlike his outward appearance, his inner world seems quite messy. Ah, her shoe bumped against a loose piece of ice. A shattered soul is a tangled thread that needs combing. But this, am I supposed to put these broken bricks back together? Regria wondered aloud, picking up the brick and placing it neatly back onto the unfinished wall. Beatrice questioned her, do whatever you want, but how did you even get into Padre's inner world? Regria continued her diligent work, replying, I only had that one telepathic moment with Rahich, but he's been gentler with me ever since. What do you think? Regria set down the next brick, a confident glint in her eyes. I can use this method on Padre too. If I want Padre on my side, I guess I need to stack these bricks as much as possible. Beatrice had to grudgingly agree. Well, that makes sense. I'm impressed you figured that out yourself. Regria's face was flushed from the biting cold, but she didn't falter. She continued to carry each brick one by one, but occasionally met with setbacks. Regria fumbled and dropped a brick, and only then did she notice her frost-nipped, reddened hands. Staring at the icy wall, Regria realized the real challenge was enduring the frigid temperature. Despite this, Regria was remarkably stubborn. Gazing at the steadily rising ice wall, she wasn't sure how long she'd been working. Her delicate hands were now marred with countless scratches, and sweat beaded on her forehead. But she didn't give up, picking up the next brick and walking towards the wall, which now towered over her. Her trembling hands lifted the brick, tried to place it in its proper position as she stood on tiptoe. The brick shifted, rolling backwards in the snow. Regria sat down heavily, racked by a persistent cough. Beatrice asked, her voice laced with concern, Are you all right, Regria? Regria, her face flushed crimson with the cold, simply asked, How long have I been here? Beatrice replied, I think it's been about 6 hours. But time in the inner world and reality are completely different. I'm so sorry for putting your body through this, Beatrice. Beatrice was unfazed. It's okay. You don't need to apologize. Regria sensed a change. Also, something feels off. Do I have a fever? This place suddenly feels so warm. Beatrice's voice was instantly filled with alarm. You can't fall asleep, Regria. Wake up. Regria's voice was weak, heavy with exhaustion. I know, but I really can't hold on anymore. Beatrice's frantic calls echoed. No, don't sleep, Regria. Open your eyes. Regria, on a cold day, all you need is a crackling fire. Regria, who had lost consciousness, stirred and awoke. Blinking her eyes open, she looked around, realizing she was back in her own room. She patted her chest, letting out a sigh of relief. Phew, I must have returned on my own. Thank goodness, I almost froze to death. A voice reprimanded her. How could you be so reckless? Regria turned to see Padre standing there. He spoke, his voice laced with exasperation. Don't use that body so carelessly, it's not yours. Let me be clear, I don't want to do this right now. Regria flushed at Padre's ambiguous words, retorting sharply. Do what? What do you mean? Padre's voice softened. I couldn't let my dear friend's body freeze to death, so I merely warmed you up a little. So don't overthink it. With that, Padre gently embraced Regria from behind. He wanted to warm Beatrice's body with his own. The embrace held all of Padre's love and longing for Beatrice. An arm reached out to embrace her, accompanied by a voice. I couldn't let my dear friend's body die, so I just gave you a little warmth. Holding her, Padre said, "Please don't misunderstand me." The fire in the fireplace crackled merrily. "You shouldn't underestimate the winter's chill," he told her. "Casually entering my mind through telepathy can be dangerous, costing you your life." Regria, clutching Padre's arm, asked awkwardly, "What are you doing?" "Let go of my hand." Suddenly, her hand became icy and stiff. Regria stared in surprise at her own hand, now tinged blue with cold. Looking at her trembling hands, she thought, "My hands, are they frostbitten? So that means whatever happens in someone else's inner world affects my body in the real world." Regria, Padre called her name, making her turn to face him. Suddenly, her body swayed backward. Catching her, Padre eased her down, explaining, "The Regria family has the ability to transfer warmth to others through direct contact. If the cold has already seeped deep into your body, I have no choice." He then took her hand and placed it against his chest. It's hot," Regria gasped. Padre continued, "But if you continue to resist like this, you can push me away. Even if one of your fingertips falls off, I won't do anything more." Regria thought to herself, "I thought those paladins would become gentle after their inner world stabilized, but that doesn't apply to this man." Still holding her hand against his chest, Padre said, "It hasn't healed yet. The cold has only subsided a little because I've only transferred a bit of warmth to you. The next wave will come soon." "Huh? The next wave?" Regria asked, surprised. Suddenly, she shuddered violently, as if her soul were being pulled away, her body no longer her own. "Damn it, wake up," Padre said, grabbing her wrist and beginning to transfer warmth. Regria groaned, her body gradually becoming numb. "Regria." Padre called her name frantically. He held her tightly, trying to transfer his warmth. Regria's face paled, and she whispered weakly, so cold." "Regria, you'll be fine," Padre said, holding her close as tears began to stream down his face. Holding Regria tightly, he whispered to her. Slowly, the color began to return to her face. In her hazy state, she heard someone calling her name. "Regria, Regria." She snapped, fully alert when she heard the word sister. She suddenly found herself on a stage, a row of empty seats before her. She saw the person who had called her name. It was her younger sister from her previous life, sitting before a violin. Her sister spoke to her. "That man lost his lover, and he's crying because of you. Yet you're so cold. Why don't you shed a single tear?" "Oh, come to think of it, you haven't shed a single tear since coming to this world, have you? Don't tell me you've actually found hope here." Regria replied, surprised. "Hey, how did you know?" Her sister continued. "Even if you're reborn in a new body, despair and depression suit you better." "Shut up," Regria shouted. "I don't cry because I have no reason to cry. Even if I'm not good at playing the piano in this world, I don't have to live like a walking corpse under my family's shadow." Her sister calmly continued her taunts. Come on, sister," as if the threads of fate between us have been completely severed. Regria's face paled. With a malicious smile, her sister said, "Unfortunately, we still have things to settle." Regria's eyes suddenly flew open. Instead of her sister on stage, she was lying in bed. Suddenly, a figure by the window spoke, asking her, "How are you feeling?" Regria looked uncertainly at the figure, asking tentatively, "Mr. Padre?" Then, with a touch of gratitude, she added, "Thank you for saving my life. I know it's Beatrice's body, and you only saved me because of it." But the figure cut her short. Regria, I thought I warned you." She could see the glint of a sword in his hand. Regria froze, her mind reeling as she realized who it was. Reik's face was grim, his voice icy. "Never mention another man's name in front of me." Scrambling out of bed barefoot, Regria thought frantically, "I'm done for. All the mistakes I've made. There's so much I want to say, but I think I have to hold it in for now." Her head swam, her back ached. Trying to maintain composure, she asked Reik, "When did you get back? I thought you were busy receiving the envoys." Reik's voice dripped with anger. "I can't believe you brought another man into your room less than a month after arriving here. You're more wanton than you appear." Regria tried to act as if nothing of consequence had happened. "It wasn't intentional, it's just—" Reik stalked towards her, fury radiating from him. "You dare tell me that performing telepathy with him was unintentional?" He placed his hands on either side of her, trapping her. His expression darkened, his voice glacial. I bet this only happened because you're such a pathetic woman. Knowing she had to be humble now, Regria replied, "First of all, I apologize for my carelessness." Inwardly, she soothed herself. I have to stay calm. There's no need to waste energy enduring his rage. She continued, "As a lady, I need to be careful with my words and actions. But in that situation, I wasn't careful enough. It's my fault." Power crackled around Reik's hand, still gripping the sword. Suddenly, he swung the sword. It plunged deep into the mirror, shattering the glass. Sparks of electricity danced around Reik, his voice thick with fury. Why would that bastard from the Winter Estate dare to do such a thing? He turned to her. How was his inner world compared to mine? Regria answered truthfully. Well, your inner world is like a ball of yarn, a human plaything, while his is just a dilapidated ice castle. I was just rebuilding it. Reik seethed. You were doing that all night? Oh, I forgot to check the time. I didn't realize it would take so long. That's the truth, I swear, Regria concluded. Reik's lips curled into a slight smirk. Remember what you said? He asked abruptly. Regria hummed in response. He continued, You asked what if I wasn't sure I had your heart, so I want to set a condition between us. Allow me to have physical contact with you, excluding sexual intercourse. If you're confident you can close your heart to me, then I have to use my strongest weapon against you. That's only fair, right? Regria questioned him. And what if I don't fall for you? Reik stepped closer. Why are you so stubborn? He asked. Then, he abruptly knelt before her. Huh? Wait, Regria exclaimed, surprised, but his hand had already slipped beneath her nightgown. How can I give the precious position of crown princess to a woman who always resists like this? Regria asked, bewildered. Reik lifted his handsome face, a smirk playing on his lips. Within 100 days from now, I'll make you get down on your knees and beg to become my crown princess. His hand tightened on her leg. I'm starting to wonder if your highness has nothing to do, Regria remarked. Reik bristled at her question. She continued, but it's fine. I accept the proposal. In return, I have a request. All right, Reik replied. I am listening. What do you want? She heard her sister's voice again. Come to think of it, I haven't shed a single tear since I woke up in this world. Don't tell me you've actually found hope here. It was as if her sister was whispering in her ear. You know, even if you wake up in a completely different body, despair and pathetic weakness still suit you. She looked at Reik standing before her. What I want is, outside, the mansion was blanketed in snow. Inside, a table laden with food awaited. At the long dining table, Regria and Reik were eating. He thought to himself, is she deaf or blind? How did she get chosen as the crown princess? I can't fathom the god's intentions. Other scholars are fighting tooth and nail for this position. But is she playing dumb or just genuinely foolish? All she has to do is snuggle up to her fiancé, whisper in his ear, and she could get anything she wants. Meanwhile, she sipped her wine leisurely, the crimson liquid shimmering in the crystal glass. Regria was also thinking, I must find a way to survive while pretending to comply. Reik's thoughts ran in a different direction. Stop being stubborn, Regria. I told you, the only way to survive is to become the crown princess. Some people want a luxurious life, overflowing with jewels, wealth, and power. It was as if they could read each other's minds through their gazes. Regria countered, but I just want a simple life with someone I love. Silence descended upon the table. Regria's thoughts drifted elsewhere. Padre's visit is my chance. I should escape with him while he's still here. Reik interrupted her thoughts. Hey, that's like committing suicide. Yoas approached and whispered, Your Highness, the items you requested this morning have been prepared. Reik wiped his mouth and acknowledged him with a hum. He strode towards her. Apologies, but we'll have to cut our meal short. There's a place I want to show you, and we should head there now. Regria asked directly, What are you plotting this time? Reik extended a hand towards her. Let's go on a date. He led her to a room filled with musical instruments. Everything in this room is yours. I brought in a piano and some string instruments. There are also some sheet music on the shelf to the right. Her eyes shimmered, tears welling up. She stammered, but I said I only wanted one instrument. Reik explained, I didn't know what kind of instrument you liked, so I just prepared everything available within the Holy Realm, as far as I know. She sat down at the piano, running her hand over its surface. Then, she asked him, You know about the Holy Realm's music? Reik replied, Only to a certain extent. The previous generations of scholars promoted their culture for quite some time. He told her, If you want, I can also hire a music teacher for you. Regria answered firmly, I don't need a music teacher. Her fingers danced lightly over the keys as she spoke. For a very long time, I tried to become a piano master. You have no idea how much effort I put into honing my piano skills. I both loved it and hated it. Even though I always resented it, I was also obsessed with it. It was the only hope I had left. She settled onto the piano bench, her slender fingers striking the keys. The sound resonated throughout the room. Rahich complimented her. This piece is beautiful. What's it called? Regria answered. It's the second movement of Vivaldi's Winter. Rahich immediately latched onto the word that bothered him most. Winter? Why did you choose to play this piece specifically? Regria countered. What do you mean, why? I played it because it's winter now. You seem more jealous than I thought. Rahich asked her, don't you know any other pieces that aren't related to the seasons? Regria closed her eyes in thought, her fingers still gliding over the keys. What should I play then? Something more serious? Suddenly, her hands were grasped. Rahich told her no. Regria opened her eyes in surprise, looking at him. Rahich requested, I want to hear a melody that's like you. Regria asked, so? Rahich pulled up a chair and sat beside her. You can learn a lot by listening to the performers playing. Your performance should be genuine, without the need for any fancy techniques. It's not complicated at all. I know someone who plays simply and quite foolishly too. Regria spoke with a hint of agitation. What? How much do you know about the piano? And how much do you know about me? Rahich closed his eyes, his fingers brushing the keys. He said to her, a piece with a clear melody suits you better than one that wanders aimlessly. Like, for instance, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. His fingers danced across the keys, and a beautiful, captivating melody filled the room. Her hands clenched slightly. Rahich continued playing as he spoke. You're so talented, so I can't understand why you would play in a style that doesn't suit you. He asked, who taught you how to play? Your parents. She lowered her head slightly, a hint of loneliness in her voice. My mother at first, but after that, I didn't have a formal teacher. Occasionally, my sister would teach me. She would correct minor flaws and mistakes while I played, like tossing a bone to a pitiful dog. Then, she lifted her head. My sister was a genius. She was perfect, known as the piano fairy. Her skills lived up to the name. Rahich asked her, were you jealous of her? Regria answered frankly, yes, very, very jealous. That's how I escaped my cage. In some ways, I could never play better than her. Regria asked him, do you think I'm stupid too? That I should never play the piano again? These ridiculous fingers. I tried to reach for something unattainable, and all I received in return was humiliation. Rahich lowered his eyes slightly, his voice soft. Most people feel threatened and suppressed in the presence of a genius. It's not your fault. Tears welled up in her eyes. Regria turned her head slightly to look at the man beside her. Reik told her, I'll introduce you to the best piano teacher in Belligram, so you can improve dramatically. Then your sister's shadow won't haunt your only hope anymore. But in return, I have a request. At this, her expression brightened. Mimicking Reika's tone and manner of speaking, she said, What request? I'm all ears, Your Highness. Reik mimicked her in return. You've learned to imitate me. He rose from his chair and moved closer to her face. Regria asked a little awkwardly, What do you want? Reik whispered his request in her ear. A kiss on my lips. In that moment, she felt strangely off. She thought, why does his characteristically gentle and deep voice make me feel so comfortable? This man must have a strong sense of self-esteem, so it's hard to believe he truly understands my situation. But Reika's eyes, those are the eyes of someone who had been suppressed by a genius. This man, his hand resting on her shoulder, leaned in closer. As she closed her eyes, she suddenly heard him chuckle. Regria opened one eye to look at him. Reik asked her, What are you doing? Why did you close your eyes? Her face flushed crimson. Annoyed, she exclaimed, Weren't you going to kiss me? Don't ask me back like that, you jerk. Is it fun teasing me? Reik replied, laughing. Yes, huh? Honestly, your reaction was so unexpected, it caught me off guard. Teasing you is quite entertaining. At this rate, I might get addicted. A sparkle entered Regria's eyes, and she laughed at him. Reik said, You're finally smiling. He stood up. From now on, always wear a smile instead of frown. Your smile will be your weapon and shield as you step into the cutthroat high society. Regria asked curiously, Huh? High society? Reik told her, I'll soon be inviting nobles of marquis rank and above to the hall to introduce you. Think of it as a dress rehearsal for entering high society as the crown princess. Schumann Bukovac will be there as well. He's a grumpy old man, almost 70, but he's definitely the best pianist in this country. He's also my piano teacher. You've tried the piano, now look over here. Which string instrument are you good at? Regria answered him. Well, I enjoy playing the cello. Standing before the cello, he said, Then you should play the cello first, and then showcase your superb piano skills. Regria asked him, but do I have a playing instrument there? Reik told her, it's a chance to show everyone that you're a talented crown princess. You'll not only be playing instruments, but also dancing, so there's a lot to prepare for. Regria asked, dancing? I have to dance too. He lowered his head slightly and replied, yes. You'll be dancing with me. He looked at her questioningly. Don't you want to? Regria rushed to explain. It's not that I don't want to, it's just that I don't know if I do want to. I've never danced before. Reik said, don't worry. This made her lift her head. Reik put his arm around her. Relax. Let me lead. Regria hesitated. Hey, you've danced a lot, but I haven't. Reik replied, since you're my future wife, I can't let you stay like this. Their feet moved to the rhythm. Reik said, I will polish you into the most brilliant jewel. Lowering his head to inhale her scent, Reik asked, what perfume are you wearing today? Regria answered, really? Oh, sorry. I forgot to put on perfume. Reik teased. Then it must be the scent of your sweat. Annoyed, she retorted, don't say that. Suddenly, he said, come to think of it, we should check our compatibility before marriage. Regria asked, bewildered, what do you mean? Reik glanced at her, asking, aren't you curious about my skills in bed? Regria's face flushed crimson. Stammering, she replied, what? Trying to compose herself, though her blush remained, she added, not at all. Why would I be curious about that? Reik didn't let the subject drop. Well, I'm curious about your skills. Regria only managed to ask, why, before Reik captured her lips with his. The moment their lips touched, Regria was utterly shocked. Her breath was quickly stolen by the man. Despite her awareness of his dangerous nature, Reik pried open her mouth, his tongue slipping inside. She could only make fragmented sounds. Her hands were tightly gripped by the man. The more she struggled to escape, the further she was pulled down as if sinking into quicksand. The kind of quicksand that could steal her life. Finally, the kiss ended, her lips regaining their freedom. Air rushed back into her lungs, making her feel reborn. Reik told her, let's stop here for today. I'll send you many books tomorrow, so make sure you study hard. Next time, it won't just be an ordinary kiss. With that, he turned and walked away. Regria called out to him, wait, I need someone to help me change. He glanced back at her. Regria said, there's a priestess I have in mind. Reik replied, but Eos is enough. She countered, I know, but this request isn't too much, is it? Reik told her, but I'm sorry, I can't do that for you right now. Suddenly, Regria walked forward, her skirt and hair swirling around her. Her hand touched Reik's cheek. The next moment, she stood on tiptoe and kissed him. Their lips met once more. As they parted, Regria softly called his name, Reik. Reik seemed to snap out of his surprise. Regria looked up at him, her voice gentle. Bring her to me. Reik continued to look down at her. In the command office at the Paladin headquarters, holding the invitation, the words, bring her to me, echoed. Padre sat in a chair, examining the invitation in his hand. A figure emerged from the shadows, asking him, will you go? Padre replied, since I've been invited, I must. The other man continued, but I'm not sure if the crown princess will retaliate after what happened between you and the crown prince in her room. Padre told him, Dietrich, your sister Beatrice, is still alive. Dietrich replied, don't get your hopes up. Even if it's true, we can't extract the divine power possessing her body and return her soul. Padre said, what do we know if we don't try? Dietrich called his name, Padre. Padre's hand, resting on the chair, trembled. He said to Dietrich, there must be a way to expel the divine power from Beatrice's body. We have to bring Beatrice back before it's too late. A week later, in the grand hall, the clear blue sky, the sunlight filtering through the palace dome, and the chirping of birds created a fairy tale-like scene. The magnificent palace gradually came into view. Suddenly, the sound of a whip cracking against a cleaner echoed, followed by a scolding voice. Clean the floor properly. How many times do I have to say it? Today's gathering will host the most esteemed nobles. Don't be lazy, you have to clean this place spotless, understand? And Tao Winston quickly raised her hand. Rubbing at it, they whirled around in surprise at the announcement. Make way, the crown princess is coming. Before them stood two figures clad in magnificent royal attire. It was Regria, looking breathtakingly beautiful as she walked, speaking as she moved. This month is when the trees are bare. Next month is when the lake freezes over, and the month after that is St. John's month, right? The maid at her side quickly replied, yes, your highness. Spring will begin when the flowers bloom. And Tao was utterly astonished to see the maid, a face she recognized. Celine? It can't be. Intact couldn't tear her gaze away from the scene unfolding before her. She really had become the crown princess's maid. Just then, Celine turned, playfully sticking her tongue out at Intact. They arrived at a room filled with luxurious royal furnishings. Celine announced, "This is the future crown princess's waiting room. The banquet will be held in the temple. This is the dress and accessories you'll need to wear for the banquet," Celine said excitedly. After the crown princess sat down, Celine continued, "There's still some time. Shall I have someone prepare lunch for you?" Regria calmly replied, "No, I'm not hungry." Celine enthusiastically picked up a book. "Then would you like to hear me read 10 etiquette tips to conquer the nobility? Eos brought it for you." Despite Celine's enthusiasm, Regria remained indifferent. Stroking her smooth hair, she replied, "Get out of here, no. Come and brush my hair." Celine stepped forward, asking as she brushed, "Are you sure you're all right?" Regria answered, "Yes, I'm sure." Opening her beautiful golden eyes, Regria continued, "I know exactly how I should behave at tonight's banquet." Thinking about the upcoming banquet, Regria set her goal. "My plan is to stay as far away from Rahich as possible. Those who hold resentment towards him will approach me." With this thought, Regria became incredibly anxious. "What I need is the support and affection of those who wish for Rahich's downfall." "I didn't know your yearning for freedom was this strong, Regria." Regria continued her internal monologue. "I've spent a whole week thinking about what life would be like married to Rahich." Regria's gaze became distant. "No matter how I think about it, I still don't think it will be good." "You don't know what a truly bad ending is, Regria." At this point, Regria's thoughts continued to race. Living in a comfortable cage is always better than being shot by a hunter while soaring in the sky. Suddenly, the door to the room creaked open. "Regria," a voice called from the doorway, causing both Regria and Celine to turn in surprise. It was Rahich, accompanied by a maid, who had entered the room. Rahich extended his hand, his expression calm. "Beatrice, are you ready?" Regria smiled at Rahich, thinking to herself, "I can't live in a gilded cage. I've done that once already." Finally, they arrived at the main hall of the magnificent palace, where beautiful ladies and noblemen were attending the banquet. The grand banquet was bustling with activity. A loud announcement captured everyone's attention. "Let us welcome the little prince of Belligram, Crown Prince Rahich, and the little star, Miss Regria Rummel." As soon as the announcement ended, welcoming horns sounded in unison. On the raised platform stood Regria and Rahich. They both looked dignified, walking forward hand in hand. Finally, they descended into the banquet hall. Rahich slowly raised his hand in greeting to the banquet. "Let the banquet begin," he said calmly, earning applause and cheers from everyone present. They then entered the banquet, smiling and greeting everyone. All eyes were on Regria, observing her expressions and demeanor. She doesn't seem to enjoy the formalities at all. If it's Beatrice, being possessed by a deity is quite all right. Another person replied, "You're right. Who would want to be with a troublemaker like her?" Overhearing these whispers as she passed, Regria felt a little awkward. "I don't think these people are complimenting me." Rahich replied, also slightly embarrassed. "That's understandable. Do you know what the owner of this body used to be called?" "They called her Mad Dog." An image of Regria, before she was possessed, flashed through their minds, dressed no differently than a servant. Rahich continued, "From the age of 5, the previous Regria wore a black dress and a high ponytail of a very unconventional style." He added, "Not only did she wear a floral dress to the flower-themed ball, but she also dressed as a man to socialize with young nobles, even smoking, drinking, and cursing." The image of a free-spirited Regria riddled with vices materialized. The current Regria inhabiting this body felt a headache coming on. "Oh my God, Beatrice, you really didn't care what others thought of you, did you?" Beatrice laughed in her mind. "Ha ha, that's why I have so many enemies." Regria's eyes widened in surprise. "You have enemies? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I was planning to find someone at the banquet to help me escape Belligram." Beatrice replied, "What do you want me to do now? Give up." Suddenly, Rahich put his arm around Regria. Beatrice continued, "Regria, Beatrice's reputation may be tarnished, but based on your performance today." Rahich pulled Regria closer. Beatrice continued, "You can transform from the mad dog of the past into a lady admired by high society." Now, Regria was being propelled forward by Rahich. Looking at the crowd of high society before her, Beatrice said, "So, use your smile as a weapon." "Your only weapon is your smile. Thinking this, Regria put on a bright, gentle smile. Your Highness, a voice called out, causing Rahich to turn and see who it was. I've come to greet the future crown princess. Rixan, with a benevolent smile, looked formally at Rahich. Lord Rixan, Rahich responded. Rixan continued pleasantly. Those crazy barbarians are running rampant. I haven't heard any good news lately, but seeing you in good health and hearing about your upcoming marriage lifts my spirits. Reik said, Ah yes. Rixan replied, I heard those barbarians are threatening the border. Rixan continued, Indeed, your highness. Those foolish barbarians have changed their tactics. Rixan went on, They ride on the backs of beasts at night to provoke our soldiers. 7 soldiers have already been attacked. Hearing this, Regria suddenly thought in surprise. Beasts? Barbarians? Rixan continued, The biggest problem, an image of the barbarians appeared, is the beasts they control. Rixan paused, leaving Regria intensely curious, hanging on to his next words. Stroking his beard, Rixan continued, I believe the only solution is to find their lair and burn their offspring. Then abruptly, Rixan turned his gaze to Regria. May I know your thoughts on this, Miss Regria? Looking at Rixan's expression, Beatrice instinctively thought, I'm familiar with that look. I've received such looks from my mother and sisters for years. It's a look of mockery. With that thought, Regria glanced at the person beside her. Seeing his pleasant expression, Regria thought, he always tests me with this question. Then, Regria looked around, thinking, he wants to judge what kind of person I am based on my answer. The noble's attitudes towards me will change. At that moment, Regria felt numb. Will I continue to be the ignored mad dog or the praised crown princess? Lost in thought, a voice startled Regria. Oh dear, my apologies. Rixan made a few sarcastic remarks, prompting applause and cheers from those around them. It's understandable that a divine being like yourself would find it difficult to comprehend such a conversation. With his words, he clapped loudly and laughed, the sound echoing around Regria and Rahich. Regria stated bravely, I will express my thoughts, Lord Rixan. Those before her found it amusing, assuming she likely wouldn't be able to say anything of substance. Regria continued, but not as a divine being. Hearing this, Rahich turned in surprise. Regria smiled gently and said, but as the crown princess. Regria repeated, I will express my thoughts, Lord Rixan, not as a divine being, but as the crown princess. Hearing this, Rixan stroked his beard and laughed. Inside Regria's mind, Beatrice was screaming, Are you crazy, Regria? You know nothing about Belligram's international relations. You should have stayed silent. Isn't this too difficult for you? Despite Beatrice's protests, Regria calmly replied, Don't underestimate me. I started reading the book Celine gave me before the banquet. Looking at Rahich's expression, Regria continued to Beatrice. There's no easy way to avoid this, Beatrice. I'm the future crown princess. I can't keep avoiding conflict and staying silent like before. Finally, Regria continued aloud. In truth, I don't know much about war. As soon as she finished speaking, Rixan burst out laughing. Just as I thought. But Regria continued. However, I do know that war only brings more hatred and anger, ultimately leaving grave consequences. Hearing this, Rixan responded, Oh, is that so? Your perspective is quite unique, madam. Rixan frowned and continued, But that way of thinking will only put the empire in danger. Regria, picturing the desolate scenes of war, said, It's not a unique idea. You could call it progressive thinking. You said earlier that the only solution is to burn all the monsters and their offspring, Lord Rixan. Are you serious? Would you really slaughter even newborn babies? Rixan's cold gaze intensified. Yes. The image of slaughtering the enemy's offspring flashed through his mind. He continued, If we leave even one, the image of a boy with round eyes looking down at a village appeared. Rixan continued, The flames of rebellion will ignite once more. Rixan stroked his beard and replied, Therefore, we cannot let a single one live. The image that appeared was of Rixan and a young captive. Regria, still wearing a gentle smile, replied, If it were me, I would first meet with their leader, resolve our differences, and listen to their desires. Rixan scoffed. You want to have a dialogue with those monsters? The nobles behind them began to whisper amongst themselves. Regria responded, I don't mean casual conversation, but diplomacy. Rixan said, Of course, we have diplomatic corps, but I don't think those barbarians can understand what we're saying. Regria continued, Perhaps it's not just them who don't understand the issue. Rixan's face creased slightly. What do you mean by that? Regria, her brow furrowing, said, "You can't win with just force. You must be able to win without bloodshed." Rickson retorted, "Are you referring to the recent war? I'm sorry to say this, but you're going too far, madam." The image of the Empire's highest-ranking knight appeared. Rickson continued, "Only knights can discuss military discipline, not a lady." Regria calmly stated, "That's strange." She continued, "So you started a discussion with me about a topic I'm not supposed to discuss. Was your intention in asking this question to embarrass me?" Rickson stammered in surprise, "No, my intention was—" Regria continued, "You said only knights can discuss this, but I don't think you're qualified, Lord Rickson." "What?" Rickson was enraged. Regria bluntly replied, "As far as I know, the people of the grasslands, whom you call monsters, have killed fewer people than our army has due to poor decision-making." Rickson roared, "Madam!" Startled, Regria flinched. Rickson continued, his face flushed with anger. "Our soldiers risk their lives to protect the people. No one has the right." Regria's eyes widened in alarm. "To insult our army." Rickson glared at her with burning eyes, especially someone who isn't even a knight. He pointed directly at Regria. "You have no right to speak about that matter. I'll let it slide this time because you didn't know, but next time," before he could finish his sentence, a hand grabbed Rickson's index finger and bent it backward. Rickson stared in shock at his broken finger. "Ack!" Rickson screamed in agony. His index finger twisted behind his hand. Even Regria covered her mouth in fear. "Ag! Ag!" Rickson continued to wail. It was Rahich who had broken his finger. He said, "Whether it's suppressing barbarians or disciplining a garbage old man, no one disrespects her. If she were to crush them with her overwhelming power, instilling fear deep within their bones." Rahich glanced at Regria and said with a smile, "That's how you quell dissent, Regria, not through dialogue." Still horrified by what she had just witnessed, Rickson continued to scream. Rahich declared, "This man's insolence will be tried in a military court." Then he ordered, "Arrest Rickson." Suddenly, a tall figure appeared behind Regria. Regria only managed a glimpse beside her. The handsome, white-haired man walked past, looking like a Prince Charming from a fairy tale. Regria couldn't tear her eyes away. Rahich commanded, "Padre." Padre replied, "Have someone from the Paladin order take over Rickson's position." He added, "Joshua will deliver the documents for the temporary decree." Then Padre grabbed Rickson by the scruff of his neck, lifting him up. "As you command, Your Majesty," Padre responded. Padre then dragged Rickson away from the banquet. As he passed Regria, he glanced at her. In Regria's eyes, the scene was incredibly romantic. Her subconscious whispered, "Poetic." But before she could dwell on it, Rahich approached with a pleasant expression and a glass of wine. "Regria," he offered her the glass. "That rude fellow has been dealt with. Let's continue enjoying the banquet. Would you like some champagne?" Regria accepted the glass. "Relax, Regria. Today is a day of celebration," Rahich said. Regria took a sip and then replied, "You said you wanted to test me, but you just wanted to use me, didn't you?" "Me?" Rahich asked, turning towards her. He recalled his thoughts before entering the banquet. "Don't play coy. You had me read those books, so I could refute Rickson if he offended me." Rahich chuckled. "I dismissed him because he insulted you." Regria took another innocent sip of champagne. "So you think he'll respect me after you resorted to violence against him? If he doesn't want to be treated like dog food," Rahich finished, startling Regria. "He has no choice." Rahich turned and walked away, leaving Regria speechless. The next day, it was Regria's turn to play the cello. Now, she was showcasing her talent in the center of the banquet hall. Everyone was appreciating the beautiful music, including a satisfied Rahich. The music continued to resonate, accompanied by Regria's melancholic expression. Finally, she finished her performance, surprised by the applause and praise. "Magnificent! Wonderful performance! Outstanding!" From a distance, Bukovats praised her. "Madam, your performance was exquisite." He approached Regria, continuing, "You perfectly captured the essence of Schubert's Death and the Maiden. Your talent is a blessing to this new nation." Regria humbly replied, "You flatter me, Lord Bukovats. I still have much to learn." Suddenly, a voice caught Bukovats' attention, and he turned to look. A female voice rang out amidst the applause, a captivating performance. "I heard your cello playing the moment I arrived at the banquet." El Rummel, dressed in a remarkably fluffy pink gown, approached Regria with a genuinely enthusiastic expression. "The melody was so enchanting. I simply had to come over immediately." Regria stammered, "Teach, thank you." "Who is she?" Regria wondered. Suddenly, El Rummel rushed forward and embraced Regria. "I've missed you so much, sister." Regria was taken aback. "Sister?" El Rummel frowned sadly. "It's me, your younger sister. Come now, do you really not recognize me?" Regria thought back in shock. "Younger sister? Impossible. The Rummel family only has one son and one daughter. I've never heard of them having another daughter around my age." El Rummel leaned close to Regria's ear and whispered, "Don't tell me you're pretending not to know me." Hearing this, Regria's face darkened with fear as realization dawned. El Rummel continued, "Why are you so surprised?" She covered her mouth with her hand and giggled. "Sister." Her gaze suddenly turned chilling. Regria glanced at her in shock. El Rummel chuckled softly into Regria's ear. "Sister, why are you so surprised?" Bukavat stepped in front of Regria, frowning. "You're being a bit impertinent. The future crown princess simply doesn't remember you." Jazelle smiled innocently. "Oh, is that so? I was just so happy to see her." She curtsied briefly. "My name is Jazelle Rummel, the second flower of the Rummel family, and Dietrich Rummel's older sister." Reik approached from behind Jazelle, eyeing her. "You're a noble of the Rummel family, Jazelle?" he inquired. "This is the first time I've heard that name." Jazelle smiled. "It's all right. That's understandable," she replied. "I was away from home for a long time due to health reasons, and only recently returned." Beatrice scoffed internally. "Health reasons? Nonsense. I've never heard of this girl." Hearing this, Regria asked softly, "Are you sure? You'll be beheaded if you're lying." Beatrice declared confidently, "I'll bet my life on it." The Duchess brought her back from the slums. At Beatrice's words, Regria inquired, "Brought back? What do you mean?" Suddenly, Jazelle ran cheerfully in one direction, calling out, "Mother!" Beatrice muttered, "There she is, finally. The cold-blooded matriarch, a witch, a giantess. The head of the Rummel family. She has many nicknames." Duchess Rummel spoke kindly. "I told you to walk slowly. Why are you in such a hurry?" Reik stepped forward and greeted Duchess Rummel. Duchess Rummel curtsied in return. "Greetings, Your Highness. It seems we've interrupted the atmosphere. It's our fault for being late. Please allow my daughter to perform a beautiful piece of music as an apology." At the Duchess's words, Jazelle smiled as well. "I practice the piano a lot. Although I'm a little nervous, I like to express myself." Regria frowned, thinking, such a sudden performance. Reik glanced back at the worried Regria and smiled. "A piece of music sounds delightful." The crown princess was just about to play the piano as well. Hearing this, Jazelle's eyes sparkled as she looked at Regria. "Really?" she asked. Regria exclaimed in surprise. "Why?" Jazelle quickly stood in front of Regria, excitedly saying, "I'm sorry, but I really want to play the piano for my sister." "Can I play first, sister?" Her fingers danced lightly over the keys. Jazelle's body swayed gently to the music. Regria sat listening, thinking, "Oh, I know this piece. It's Beethoven's Emperor. This was my real sister's favorite piece, and the one she played most proficiently. How could I not recognize her playing?" Those present couldn't help but whisper amongst themselves. "Listening to this piece makes me want to dance. Oh, it's incredible. It feels like we're listening to a fairy's melody." Hearing these praises, Regria couldn't help but feel dejected. Everyone is amazed by her talent. "I was such a fool to think I could escape my sister and find happiness by coming to this world. And yet these feelings still torment me. The scars of a lifetime of judgment and comparison still linger." Seeing Regria's despondency, Reik spoke up, encouraging her. "Do you remember what I said about the way you play the piano, Regria? Your playing is very sincere, without any advanced or complex techniques. I could tell the player was a simple and unpretentious person." "Listen carefully, Regria. Music like a straight line suits you better than one that meanders and twists." As the music ended, everyone present showered Jazelle with praise. "Wow, that was magnificent, miss. You could hold a solo concert. I want to hear it again." Jazelle closed her eyes, basking in the compliments. Watching Jazelle revel in the praise, Regria fell into thought. "Even after all this time striving, I still can't surpass my sister. But I can't give up, because I have no other choice. This is the only thing I know how to do." Regria sat quietly at the piano, consoling herself. "If I can't win, I don't need to try so hard. I just need to play my own music, not a song that meanders and twists. I'll play a piece like a straight line." The piano resonated through the hall as Regria closed her eyes, letting her soul flow with the music. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Isn't that Beethoven's pathetic? Show quiet. Rahich glanced at Duchess Rummel. That woman found a replacement the very day she lost her daughter. I've been so focused on Regria, I underestimated Duchess Rummel. The reason she brought a divine entity and keeps her like her own daughter is to solidify the Rummel family's position as neutral members. Even though Regria is destined to be the crown princess, the music gradually faded, and Regria slowly opened her eyes. A wave of enthusiastic applause washed over her. Lord Bukovatz, tears welling in his eyes, exclaimed, "Incredible! Madam, your performance was outstanding. I could feel the pain and solace interwoven within the music. Truly moving." Regria, hearing this, covered her mouth with a chuckle. Thank you," she stammered. Suddenly, Jazelle rushed forward, feigning admiration. "Sister, that was amazing. I want to talk to you. Why did you choose to stay near the elementary school? Sister, 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 sister? Why aren't you answering me? Let's discuss music, sister." Regria's face contorted at Jazelle's incessant questioning. Clutching her forehead, she turned away, murmuring later. Jazelle persisted, undeterred. "Oh, but I'm so curious now." "Now wait, I'll go with you." Regria silently pleaded in agony. "Please, just leave me alone." "Enough." Padre stepped forward, gripping Jazelle's hand as she continued to pester Regria. "Do not approach her again," he warned. Jazelle whimpered softly, "Ouch. That hurts." Padre remained impassive, his grip unwavering. "Since you haven't officially debuted in high society, I'll overlook your rudeness this time. But if you act like this again, I won't simply issue a warning. Do you understand?" Reik approached. "That's enough, Padre." Padre responded respectfully, "Your Highness," and released Jazelle's hand. Reik interjected, "You've arrived just in time. It seems the future crown princess is tired. Could you escort her to the resting area?" At these words, Jazelle clenched her fists, glaring at them, suddenly powerless to do anything. Padre obeyed. "As you wish, Your Highness." In the hallway, Padre escorted Regria towards the resting area. Neither spoke, the silence thick with awkwardness. Regria, attempting to ease the tension, finally spoke. I really appreciate your help back there." "So, Padre." Padre continued walking silently, offering no reply. The tension ratcheted up another notch. Regria, embarrassed by his silence, thought, I knew it. He doesn't even want to talk to me. He must still be angry about that day." Suddenly, Padre spoke, pulling Regria from her thoughts. "You don't need to address me so formally when we're alone." Regria looked up at Padre, their eyes meeting. He spoke softly, "Just Padre is fine." A blush crept up Regria's cheeks, her eyes shining as she gazed at him. The moon was bright, the outside world quiet. No one had left yet. Jazelle fumed. "Mother said she would make me the star of high society. Mother promised. I was humiliated like that. How can we just leave? Mother said I'm a noble now." Duchess Rummel remained silent, glancing around, noting the presence of others. Jazelle continued to complain. "I know today wasn't my official debut, but I wanted to make a good impression on the high-ranking nobles. But by the end of the party, hardly anyone even paid attention to my performance." Duchess Rummel finally spoke, addressing Dietrich. "When will the carriage arrive?" "Soon, madam," Dietrich replied. Jazelle continued to sulk. "Mother, I was ignored. It's all Regria's fault. Are you even listening to me?" Duchess Rummel replied calmly. "I am listening. You seem upset." Jazelle snapped. "Of course I'm upset. Don't you feel angry too?" "The carriage arrived," the Duchess replied. "Well, if I were angry too, would it make any difference?" As the carriage pulled to a stop, Duchess Rummel stepped inside, glancing at Jazelle. "This doesn't change the fact that you failed to capture Schumann Bukovatz's attention," she stated coolly. Jazelle, no longer daring to raise her voice, mumbled. Then, struggling to follow her mother into the carriage, she continued, "It's all her fault, Regria's. She's my older sister." Duchess Rummel responded with a simple, "Is that so?" Jazelle quickly corrected herself. "I mean, she's my older sister from the Holy Land, and now they're both in Belligram." Dietrich interjected, "Quiet, we're in front of the temple." Jazelle whined, "Why?" Dietrich corrected her again. "You must address the Duchess properly. Not mother, but madam." Jazelle persisted, "But why?" Dietrich's final words sent a shiver of both anger and embarrassment through Jazelle. "You're not the real Jazelle." Jazelle gasped, "Huh? What did you just say?" Unwilling to witness any further outbursts, Duchess Rummel snapped. Jazelle Rummel, I've been observing your behavior all day. It seems I must teach you some manners. She added, with a saccharine sweetness that held a chilling undercurrent, that the evening would be quite rigorous. Jazelle, seeing the look in the woman's eyes, trembled at the thought of what awaited her. Then it was over. The carriage rolled away, and the guard who had been standing watch at the gate emerged. Slowly, he removed his hat and pulled a pair of spectacles from his pocket. Putting them on, he frowned, pondering the conversation he had just overheard. Back inside the castle, Regria was speaking with Padre. Thank you, Lord Padre. I mean, Padre. Padre, pleased to see Regria warming up to him, replied. The performance was splendid. And then he left after socializing. Regria added, shrugging. She sighed and Beatrice asked, what's wrong? Regria dragged herself towards a chair, answering, my legs feel like jelly. Beatrice praised her. That's amazing. To play the harp so skillfully despite your worries. Sinking into the chair, Regria said, it wasn't the performance I was worried about. Then what? Beatrice inquired. Regria replied, my former sister. I'm certain it was her. Beatrice countered, but there's no concrete evidence to confirm she's your sister. Regria recalled her performance. Just by listening to her play, I recognized her. She probably recognized me too. Beatrice immediately suggested, really? Then report it to the temple. Regria questioned, report what crime? Beatrice explained, but I'm mentioned in the hall. It seemed the Duchess brought her back from the slums. Regria agreed with Beatrice's statement. Beatrice continued, all illegally summoned divine beings must be reported to the temple immediately. Regria didn't understand what illegal summoning was. Beatrice clarified, I'm talking about divine beings summoned by unethical individuals like Duchess Rummel and then sold into sexual slavery. Regria asked, shocked, sold to whom? The answer was corrupt paladins. As they conversed, the creak of a door startled Regria. She turned to see that it was just the wind blowing open a window. Regria moved to close the window, asking Beatrice, but why would Duchess Rummel do such a thing? Beatrice informed her, that woman uses divine power as a weapon. She pressed further, how exactly does she do that? Beatrice answered, by using the power of divine beings. At this, a realization dawned on Regria. Wait, is she forcing them to form spiritual connections with paladins? Beatrice offered an example. Look at Padre. You saw how that ill-tempered paladin became gentle after the spiritual connection. If Duchess Rummel forces Jazelle to form spiritual connections with countless paladins, she can turn those paladins into pawns for the Rummel family. The implications hit Regria hard. Her hands trembled as she thought, oh my God, no way. Padre formed a connection with Jazelle while trying to protect me. Will he be all right? Regria fretted. Beatrice responded calmly. Oh, he'll be fine. You engaged in a powerful, passionate spiritual connection with him all night. You've practically left your mark on Padre's soul. Anything she tries to do to him will be useless. Regria remained puzzled. You mean Padre can't form a spiritual connection with any other divine being now? Beatrice confirmed, probably not. If another divine being tries to connect with him, he'll immediately experience a powerful backlash. Regria pressed further. What would have happened to Padre if I hadn't disappeared? Beatrice countered. Why do you care about Padre now? You were planning to use him to escape Rahich before. It seemed Regria was growing increasingly uneasy. Oh, what is it now? Beatrice inquired. Regria fought back a wave of nausea. I don't know what to do. As she struggled, a figure appeared, offering her a vial. Miss, you look unwell. Would you like some medicine? Instinctively, Regria reached out. Oh, thank you. But then, a flicker of awareness returned, and she recoiled, taking a step back. The other person seemed equally surprised. Wait, they stammered. Please don't scream. Calm down. I won't hurt you. The seemingly harmless individual attempted to engage her in conversation. I was just curious about the person who's going to marry my brother. Brother? Regria questioned. The person immediately broke into a bright smile. Yes, I'm F4. Rahich is my older brother. Regria remained unconvinced. Liar. I've never seen the name F4 in the royal records. F4 responded, of course not. My mother was the emperor's mistress. I'm sorry for startling you, Mississippi. I should have come to greet and introduce myself earlier, but at least I got to see you today. Regria remained silent, simply staring at F4. F4 continued, anyway, it's a pleasure to meet you, Regria. A pregnant silence hung in the air. Regria was unnerved by F4's earlier smile. F4, however, continued to smile pleasantly. Sensing something amiss, she made to leave. Don't even think about doing anything foolish, F4 warned, stepping closer to Regria. Even if you leave this room, No one will help you. His demeanor had shifted dramatically. F4 held out the vial again. So drink this medicine, Mississippi. You said you were feeling nauseous. Regria politely declined. I appreciate the offer, but I won't drink it, thank you. F4 persisted. Oh, come on. I made it myself. Regria felt compelled to retort. Then you drink it first. F4 chuckled. You're quite suspicious, but that's a good habit. It'll help you live longer. With that, he brought the vial to his lips, a smile playing on his face, and drank. Regria watched him intently. F4 took a sip, then lowered the vial, leaving some of the liquid untouched. He smiled again. See, you won't die from drinking this. Now say a. Regria responded, bewildered. What? F4 brought the vial closer to her mouth. Open your mouth. I'll feed you the medicine. Regria backed away, refusing. I don't need to drink it. F4 pressed forward, but I went through a lot of trouble to make it. Drink it. As F4 continued to advance, Regria grew increasingly uncomfortable. I said I don't need it, she exclaimed, swatting her hand out. The vial went flying, shattering against the floor. Regria squeezed her eyes shut. F4, too, seemed momentarily startled. Then he spoke. I thought you were a delicate person, but as the future crown princess, you seem rather violent. Luckily, I like my women rough. Seeing F4's demeanor, Regria backed away further, shouting, Stay away from me. F4 lunged closer. How can I make you believe me? I really came all this way to see my future sister-in-law. And he trailed off, his stomach rumbling audibly, and tears began to well up in his eyes. Regria froze, utterly bewildered. F4 began to cry in earnest, whimpering pathetically. I haven't eaten in 3 days. I'm going to starve to death here, he wailed. Regria's stomach also chose that moment to rumble loudly. F4, seemingly oblivious to the tension moments before, perked up. Excuse me, do you happen to have a sandwich or something to eat? The scene shifted outside, where Padre walked slowly beneath the lamplight. He was in a daze, lost in memories of his time with Regria. He recalled her words, Thank you, Lord Padre. I mean, Padre. He pondered, even if another soul occupies her body, how could a person change so drastically? Now she radiates light. In contrast, the Beatrice I knew had the eyes of a dying person. Eyes filled with boredom, apathy, and helplessness. Just looking at them made me feel suffocated. But Regria is different. Deep within those eyes lies conviction and resolve. A smile touched his lips unbidden, but then he shook his head, dispelling the thought. I shouldn't overcomplicate things. That person isn't Beatrice. He continued walking. Just as his inner turmoil began to subside, another matter arose requiring his attention. Hey, wake up, a voice called out. A figure knelt beside another, saying, He's passed out. This is bad. Padre approached. What happened? He asked. Sir Knight, the soldier exclaimed. The other man explained, I'm not quite sure, sir. He was fine just a moment ago. I returned from patrolling the royal garden and found him collapsed like this. Padre surveyed the scene, his gaze falling upon a vial near the unconscious man's hand. He sat down and picked it up, sniffing the contents cautiously. This is Memory Bloom, he concluded. Memory Bloom? Isn't that the name of a flower? The other man asked. Padre glanced at the remaining liquid in the vial. Indeed, if you ingest an extract from its roots, you lose the memories of the past 24 hours. The other man looked perplexed. But who would do such a thing? Padre continued his observation, then murmured, Someone who doesn't want anyone to know they met privately with the future crown princess. Should we report this to His Highness immediately, sir? The soldier asked. Padre stood up. No, His Highness is meeting with Marquis Resno, so he's not here. Even so, we can't wait until he returns, the other man insisted. Suddenly, Padre reached out and gripped the man's jaw. Sir, what are you doing? The bewildered soldier asked. Padre's expression was grim. Please understand, His Highness cannot know about this. The other man began to panic. What do you mean? Padre brought the vial close to the man's mouth, forcing his jaw open. If he finds out, he'll confine Beatrice under the pretext of increased security. Wait, the soldier struggled. Padre poured the remaining liquid into his mouth. Everything I do is for Beatrice, he reminded himself. Inside, it seemed Regria and F4 had found sustenance. Sandwiches. F4 took a large bite, his eyes widening. Wow, this sandwich is delicious. Did you make it yourself? Regria watched him, replying, No, I don't cook. Eos prepared this for me. F4 took another bite. This is the life of a future crown princess. Regria seized the opportunity to question him. What is your status? F4 licked his fingers. That's a secret. Regria pressed further. F4 isn't your real name, is it? That's also a secret. F4 replied with a smirk. You have too many secrets, Regria pointed out. You ask too many questions, F4 countered. Can I ask you something? Certainly, Regria responded. Do you have feelings for my brother? F4 inquired. Regria's expression immediately changed. What? F4 leaned back in his chair, adopting a conspiratorial tone. You shouldn't fall for my brother. Honestly, you deserve better. My brother is a good-for-nothing. Regria was taken aback. What? Why would you say that? F4 placed his hands on the table and stood up. Listen, I'm telling you this because I care about you. He then abruptly stepped closer to Regria, his voice low and serious. If you want to know the truth about my half-brother, he began, you must leave the temple. When you turn left at the main entrance of the cathedral, you'll see a neatly trimmed thorn bush in the grass. Within that thorn garden stands an old stone tower. Search around the tower, and you'll find a switch that opens a secret passage. Leaning in conspiratorially, F4 whispered, so, once we find the switch and enter the secret passage, what happens then? A wide, almost unsettling smile spread across his face. Regria watched him silently, waiting for him to continue. When he offered nothing more, she prompted, what's in the passage ultimately? F4 moved closer still, his breath warm against her ear. Within that thorn garden stands an old stone tower. Search around the tower, and you'll find a switch that opens a secret passage. So, once we find a switch and enter the secret passage, what happens then? He repeated, his voice a low murmur. You'll see something quite surprising. A faint smile played on his lips. Regria pressed him again. What's at the end of that passage? F4 looked at her intently. My brother. Yes, my name is F4. Reik is my brother. Lies, Regria stated flatly. F4's eyes widened in protest. I've never seen the name F4 in the royal family records, she continued, her gaze unwavering. I thought she was just a pet being kept at home, but it seems she's only pretending to be controlled. She doesn't even scream in fear when she sees a stranger. She stays calm and is wary enough to be concerned about drinks offered by others. F4 picked up his vial and drank deeply. Lowering the vial, he added, and she's incredibly reckless, unafraid to take risks. His expression twisted into something dark and unsettling. Wait a moment, he said, reaching out to gently stroke her hair. What are you doing? Regria asked, pulling back slightly. F4 simply replied, don't move. She couldn't fathom his intentions. As for what's in the tower, he continued, his voice dropping to a whisper, I must keep that a secret. What if, she began, but he cut her off with an unexpected compliment. You're quite lovely, Regria, regardless. Irritation flared in Regria's eyes. Are you playing with me? She demanded. F4 feigned a bashful air. Oh, what am I to do? He sighed dramatically, leaning closer. Perhaps I've truly fallen for you. Will you marry me, Regria? You wouldn't have to get pregnant. We could live happily together. It's quite romantic, isn't it? His hand continued to toy with her hair. F4, Regria said softly, her voice laced with warning. He simply hummed in response. Then, she struck him sharply on the head. Ow! F4 yelped, clutching his head with a wounded expression. Hey, why did you hit me? 2 tears welled in his eyes, threatening to spill over. Why do the men in this country propose marriage as if it's nothing? Regria demanded, her voice tight with anger. Is marriage a joke to you? It's not a joke, F4 retorted indignantly. Then, with a sudden shift to solemnity, he vowed, I swear, if you marry me, you'll live a long life, not die young like other divine beings. Regria looked at him skeptically. What did you just say? She began, but a voice called out from the hallway, interrupting her. Lady Regria, are you in there? Recognizing the voice, Regria turned towards the door. Padre, F4 scowled. That annoyingly shiny knight is here. Then abruptly, he said, I'm sorry, Regria. Regria looked at him, confused. He stepped behind her, one arm wrapping around her, the other clamping over her mouth. What are you doing? Regria muffled against his hand. Just help me out a little, F4 hissed. The door burst open, kicked in by Padre. Regria, he shouted, his voice filled with concern, then hardening as he took in the scene. You, Severek, F4 said, his voice dripping with mock reproach. What a violent way to knock on a door. Padre snarled, spitting out the other man's full name. F4 Senua Misgrado. F4 faint hurt. Oh, why are you looking at me like I'm some kind of monster? His expression and tone darkened. I'm wounded. His grip tightened around Regria's neck. Don't you also carry His Majesty's blood? Padre demanded, his voice rising. Are you going to? A spear materialized, rising from the floor beside him. Padre reached for his weapon. Continue this reckless behavior? He leveled the spear at F4. He then asked in a raised voice, how long are you going to keep this up? The two men remained locked in a tense standoff. F4 broke the silence. Calm down, Padre. It's been a while, hasn't it? Regria struggled to breathe against the pressure of his arm. My hand is tightening, F4 said, his voice low and menacing, because you're making me anxious. Normally, I'd be delighted to have a brawl with you, but I'm incredibly hungry right now. So I'll play with you next time. With that, he shoved Regria towards Padre. Regria, F4 called out to her. She turned her head slightly to look back at him. Thank you for helping me, he said. I'm leaving now. He began to sink into a swirling current of black energy. As he disappeared, he added, oh, and don't tell my brother about today. See you later. Finally, he vanished completely, leaving only a dark mark on the floor where he had stood. Padre rushed to Regria's side, his voice filled with concern. Are you hurt? He asked. Regria looked up at him, their eyes meeting. A heavy silence hung between them, unspoken questions lingering in the air. Back at the castle, Regria sat in a gazebo in the garden, lost in thought. She sat with her chin resting on her hand, replaying the events of the day in her mind. She recalled Padre's words to her father. Don't you also carry His Majesty's blood? Are you going to? Judging by Padre's reaction, F4's claim of being Reika's half-brother seemed to be true. Just then, Celine approached her. My lady, she said. Regria turned her attention to her maid. But what I need to know, she thought, is why he wanted to see me. Is something troubling you, my lady? Celine asked. No, why do you ask? Regria replied, her mind racing. Could this be a trap? You seem a little tired, Celine observed. Oh, I'm fine, Regria said dismissively, just a little sleepy. Finally, she made up her mind. Instead of agonizing over it, I should go to the tower, F4 mentioned. Then everything will become clear. Celine, she said, let's go for a walk. I need to shake off this drowsiness. A walk, my lady? Celine questioned. But the weather isn't very good today. Oh, it's not that bad, Regria insisted, already starting to walk. The scenery here is beautiful. Let's go. Yes, my lady. Just a moment, Celine replied, hurrying to catch up. The flowers in the garden were in full bloom. Regria and Celine strolled beneath the blossoming arches. Suddenly, Regria spoke. Celine, yes, my lady. Celine responded promptly. Have you heard anything from Lord Padre? Regria asked. No, my lady, Celine replied. Then have you heard any strange rumors from the temple? Regria pressed. Celine, always eager for a bit of gossip, perked up. What kind of rumors, my lady? She asked. Regria turned her head, offering a dismissive reply. Oh, it's nothing. Don't worry about it. Celine looked puzzled. Regria's thoughts continued to churn. Strange, she mused. Why is it so quiet here? Security hasn't been tightened after what happened yesterday. Then, something caught her eye. Her gaze lingered on the dilapidated castle F4 had told her about. Perhaps this was a fortunate turn of events. There it is, she thought. The stone tower F4 mentioned. The ancient tower, long abandoned, stood weathered and worn, covered in a blanket of green moss. Celine, looking at the tower, spoke hesitantly. Perhaps we should head back, my lady. It's about to rain. Regria considered her options. What should I do about Celine? She wondered. I don't want her to get into trouble because of me. Looking down, she noticed her skirt had caught on a thorn bush by the side of the path. Immediately, she sat down, feigning distress. Oh no, she cried. Celine rushed to her side. My skirt is caught on a thorn. It's ruined. Oh dear. Dramatically, she covered her face with her hands. What will become of my reputation if anyone sees me like this? Celine, now panicked, quickly offered a solution. I'll go find something to mend your skirt, my lady. Oh, would you? Regria asked, watching as Celine hurried away. Of course. I'll be right back. Celine called back as she practically ran. Thank you, Regria said. She added, as an afterthought, be careful not to fall. There's no need to rush. Take your time. Yes, my lady, Celine replied. Regria watched as her maid's figure receded into the distance. Regria turned towards the tower, her gaze lifting to its heights. By now, She had reached the moss-covered edge of the tower's base. Night had fallen, but a carriage still sped along the road. Judging by the prized horses and opulent carriage, the owner must have been a nobleman. Inside, Rahich listened as someone reported, "The Duchess is taking control of Regria's younger sister." "You mean the girl named Jazelle?" Reik asked. "Yes," the other man replied. "More accurately, the sacred object within her." He continued, "So they are a pair of sisters, both possessing sacred objects. While rare," the aide said, "it's not unheard of. There was that Fojo scandal involving Agnes Lindwood, Valcando Warwick, and Susanna Wincombe." Rahich mused. "That happened in the year 372, his aide informed him." Rahich sat in silence for a moment. Then, the aide continued, "Agnes Lindwood and Susanna Wincombe were also a pair of sisters who were sacred entities. Agnes was the elder sister, and Susanna the younger. Agnes Lindwood didn't want to marry Valcando Warwick, and when she met Susanna at a party, a fojo occurred. This phenomenon refers to two sisters from the sanctuary reincarnating into different bodies, effectively swapping their physical forms. Afterward, Agnes ran away from Valcando, pretending to be Susanna. But for some reason, Agnes returned to her original body, wanting to become Susanna again, and went mad. That's when the story came to light. Worse yet, Valcando didn't learn the truth until 3 years after their marriage, and they already had a child. If a fojo has occurred, Rahich stated, this is a serious matter. His aide stood up excitedly. Yes, precisely. That's why Regria cannot meet her sister. Suddenly, the horses came to an abrupt halt. The two men inside the carriage were jolted by the sudden stop. Oof! Both were thrown backward. Ah! The aide cried out in alarm. What was that? Why did the carriage stop? He asked, fear creeping into his voice. Rahich remained remarkably calm. He gestured for his aide to stay put. Quiet, he commanded, and stepped out of the carriage. The aide fumbled for his spectacles and put them on as Rahich exited. I smell blood, Rahich said. Outside, the night lamps still glowed brightly. The frightened aide dared only to poke his head out. Your Highness, it's dangerous for you to go out there alone. Rahich stepped fully out of the carriage and then abruptly turned his gaze towards the roof. He sensed someone watching him. Finally clear of the carriage, Rahich waited. The aide, oblivious, asked, what is it? Stay inside if you don't want to die, Rahich warned. The aide's eyes widened in terror. What? Suddenly, the door slammed shut. Your Highness, the aide shouted from within. Outside, Rahich stood vigilant, scanning his surroundings, his gaze fixed on a particular point in the darkness. Then a voice spoke. You're always alone when you have private conversations, aren't you, brother? Perched atop the carriage, F4 looked down at him. You don't even have a weapon to defend yourself. What if you were ambushed like this? I'm the only weapon I need, Rahich replied coldly. F4 tilted his chin up. Oh dear, such arrogance will be your downfall, brother. Rahich inquired about his well-being. It's been a while, F4. How have you been? Thanks to you, F4 responded sarcastically. I've been starving for 3 days. I am your brother, you know. His tone and expression suddenly turned sinister. How dare you set a trap to prevent me from seeing my future sister-in-law? Then you shouldn't have provoked me in the first place, Rahich retorted. Rahich's own gaze and demeanor darkened. How dare you send assassins to harm the future crown princess? He demanded. F4's tone shifted again, becoming almost pleading. I told you it was a misunderstanding. I swear I knew nothing about that. Rahich's demeanor changed accordingly. As the master of the small eyes, how could you not know? Rahich's gaze fell upon the slain coachman. He asked, why did you kill him? F4 responded casually, I wouldn't kill anyone unless I benefited from it. After all, I'm a professional. Suddenly, Rahich's demeanor turned glacial. He glanced up at F4 perched on the carriage roof. Get down before I take your life, he threatened. F4's attitude shifted as well, becoming arrogant. What if I don't want to? An arrow suddenly whizzed from seemingly nowhere. It grazed Rahich's face, leaving a bloody gash. The arrow embedded itself in the carriage wall, stained with his blood. Rahich instantly sensed danger lurking in the darkness. Countless eyes stared at him from the bushes opposite. A multitude of archers, seemingly endless, emerged. Rahich showed no fear. His first action was to taunt his brother on the carriage roof. Even your way of revenge is as cowardly and pathetic as a rat. Brother, are you collaborating with barbarians now? F4 responded to his taunt, I'm not collaborating with them, I'm using them. Rahich looked up at the carriage roof in surprise. What? He asked. But F4, who had been perched there a moment before, was gone. Rahich felt a surge of annoyance at his brother. Suddenly, the word Vikin rang out. It was followed by a chorus of voices, all chanting, "Where is Vikin? Where is Vikin?" Rahich's memory stirred at the name. The barbarian locked in the dungeon hasn't eaten anything. What if he dies? What was that barbarian's name again? I remember his name was Vikin. Ah, I see. I was wondering how F4 managed to bring these filthy monsters here. It seems they're looking for their companion. The men continued shouting and questioning, but he couldn't understand their language. A bunch of foolish barbarians, he cursed inwardly. His hands began to glow with gathering power. One of the men shouted, "Demon!" A chorus of screams followed. "Demon! Demon!" Rahich's hands now pulsed with energy, lightning crackling around him. Standing in the rain by the tower, a massive bolt of lightning could be seen splitting the sky. Regria crouched low, the rain washing over her. She simply sat there, still. Looking at the tower before her, she thought, "I saw a light in the tower." Regria stood up and looked towards the source of the light. "It's a good thing it's so gloomy, or I wouldn't have noticed that light. It's right around here." After fumbling for a moment, Regria found the button to activate the mechanism. The stone door slowly ground open, revealing the entrance. The wall opened. Regria hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside. A flight of stairs stretched into the dark interior of the tower. Regria felt a flicker of fear, but then steeled her resolve and entered. Outside, the heavy rain and thunder continued, an ominous backdrop to her exploration. Regria proceeded down the corridor, thinking to herself, "I can't believe there's such a hidden place within the sanctuary grounds." The deeper she went, the more anxious and apprehensive she became. "Why aren't you saying anything, Beatrice? Don't you want to help me anymore? Suit yourself. I don't need your help anyway." Lost in her thoughts, Regria accidentally stepped on the hem of her dress, and disaster struck. Instead of carefully descending the stairs, Regria tumbled down. Her scream echoed in the darkness. Sitting on the ground, clutching her aching ankle, Regria groaned, "Ouch, that hurts." A strange light caught Regria's attention. She looked up at a half-open door, from which the light emanated. Without hesitation, Regria pushed the door open and entered. But she quickly wrinkled her nose, covering her mouth. "It stinks in here." Regria found herself in a long corridor, illuminated by 2 rows of brightly burning torches. Walking along, Regria observed the cold, stark cells. "What is this place?" she wondered. It looks like an ordinary prison. Could Rahich really be hiding something in a place like this? While taking in the grim surroundings, Regria heard a roar in the distance. "Give it up, boy. Are you still going to be silent as a stone today? I bet the salt water is stinging your skin by now, but you still don't make a single sound, you stubborn beast. Here, bring me the whip." The voice seemed to be coming from the end of the corridor, as if someone were torturing a prisoner. Curiosity piqued, Regria cautiously approached, hiding behind the wall and peeking her head out to observe. The brutal jailer declared, "We have to whip these monsters until they break." The jailer picked up a leather whip, stroking it lightly as if testing its strength. With a cruel, almost demonic glint in his eye, he addressed the prisoner, whose hands were bound behind his back. "Let's see if you can keep your silence now." Witnessing the horrific scene, Regria covered her mouth to stifle a cry. The prisoner's filthy body was covered in bloody wounds, and he knelt at the jailer's feet. Blood dripped steadily from the corner of his mouth onto the damp floor. The jailer began his gruesome work. A merciless lash landed across the prisoner's shoulders. The force of the whip instantly tore through his skin, sending a spray of blood into the air. Despite this, the prisoner didn't utter a single sound of pain. This seemed to enrage the jailer further. "How dare you cause me so much trouble? You filthy barbarian. Die, just die." With each curse, another lash fell upon the prisoner's battered body. Regria watched the entire ordeal unfold, horrified. "Oh my goodness, this is brutal. What did that man do to deserve such a harsh beating?" The sharp crack of the whip continued to echo through the prison. Still, the prisoner remained silent. Then, he lifted his head slightly, his eyes locking with Regria's in a chilling stare. "You rat, you still won't talk?" the jailer snarled, his whip continuing its relentless assault. Seeing the prisoner's gaze, Regria quickly ducked back behind the wall. Her heart pounding with fear, Regria clutched her chest. "It definitely saw me. What am I going to do? The door opened, and Rahich entered, followed by his aide. The aide could only stammer, "Forgive me, Your Highness." Rahich sneered, "You useless fools." Hearing the voice, Regria realized it was Rahich, and her face paled. If she were caught here, she was certain to die. Fortunately, Regria's mind worked quickly, and she slipped into a nearby cell, concealing herself behind some wooden crates. Thankfully, the boxes provided enough cover, and Rahich, seemingly preoccupied, walked past Regria's hiding place without noticing her. Rahich said coldly, "Then I'll talk to him myself. Bring out his friend." Regria listened silently, her heart sinking with dread as Rahich continued past her hiding spot. "Then I'll make him talk myself. Bring out his friend," Rahich reiterated, clamping a hand over her mouth to stifle any sound. Regria thought, "That's Rahich's voice. But what is he doing here?" Rahich looked down at Viken. "Why won't you talk? Are you waiting for your barbarian friends to come and rescue you?" Viken remained silent, his head bowed. The aide trailing behind him spoke up. "I've brought them, Your Highness." At this, Viken lifted his head. Rahich sneered. "Look, we've captured your dear friends." The captured individual cried out, "Viken." The boy among them sobbed, "Viken, I'm sorry. Everyone is dead." Viken was visibly shaken by the news, but still, he remained silent. Suddenly, Rahich pulled the boy towards him. "You barbarians are truly foolish," he taunted. At this, Viken finally shouted at him. Rahich looked down at him, his voice laced with menace. "So you finally decided to speak? Tell me where your base is if you don't want to see heads rolling." As he spoke, Rahich tightened his grip on Hinz's neck, making it difficult for him to speak or breathe. Rahich tightened his grip for a moment, then continued, "And after that, I'll let you and your friends go." Viken replied, "We plainsmen always stand by our convictions." After listening, Rahich calmly stated, "Oh, is that so?" Then, squeezing Hinz's neck, he added, "Well said, but you'd better cooperate while I'm still feeling merciful." Hinz struggled, managing to call out to Viken, "After death, we will reach the land of warriors. We will go to paradise." Rahich, enraged by these words, tightened his grip further. "Paradise doesn't exist in this world. How many times do I have to tell you that?" With a sickening crack, he snapped Hinz's neck, letting the boy's lifeless body crumple to the floor. Viken, witnessing the horrific act, cried out, "Hinz!" As Hinz lay dead on the ground, Rahich said, "It's too early to scream. After all, you still have one friend left." He then grabbed the other captive, a young girl, by the neck. He continued, "This is your last chance. If you want to save your friend, tell me where your base is located." Viken lowered his head, refusing to answer. Then he began to laugh. "Ha ha." Annoyed, Rahich questioned, "What are you laughing at? Are you laughing because you're afraid?" Viken finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "I've heard about you, about a demon." Rahich asked, "What?" Viken glared at him, his eyes filled with a chilling intensity. "You are the son your father doesn't acknowledge. I pity you." Hearing this, a strange light flickered in Rahich's eyes. His aide, outraged, exclaimed, "You barbarian! How dare you!" Rahich stopped him. "Wait." He then addressed Viken, his voice laced with a chilling curiosity. "You just said you pity me? You should be screaming in anger, yet you used the word pity to describe me." As he spoke, crackling currents of energy began to emanate from his body. He then looked down and asked, "So what?" As he finished speaking, the electrical currents intensified. The energy surged outwards, striking the girl beside him. She screamed in agony. "Ah!" Hidden outside the room, Regria clapped a hand over her mouth, stifling a cry of horror. Moments later, the girl's body was charred beyond recognition. Regria's mind reeled. "What did I just see? Is that person really dead? Impossible. How could someone die like that?" The girl's body collapsed to the ground, instantly turning to ash. Nausea welled up inside Regria, and she fought the urge to vomit. Reik's aide glanced towards the entrance, but Regria had managed to remain hidden. While she was still trying to process the horrific scene, Viken yelled, "Kill me. A warrior never fears death. Kill me." Rahich replied, "Unfortunately, I can't kill you just yet. Instead, I'll keep bringing your friends here until you confess." Viken spat a curse at him. "You demon." Rahich responded, "Yes, I am a demon, and from now on, you will pay the price for pitying a demon like me." With that, Rahich stood up and began to laugh. "Ha ha!" His laughter grew louder and louder, echoing through the prison. Regria, watching from her hiding place, thought, "Oh my God, he's not pretending or joking. This feels like a terrible nightmare." Is that really Rahich? I can't stand this anymore. I have to escape before it's too late. I have to get out of here before they notice me. Regria made a move to run, then hesitated. No, this is impossible. If I open this door, they'll definitely hear it, and then Rahich will come here. But then, her hand went to the door handle. I can't stay here another minute. In the other room, Rahich was watching Vikin with a perverse satisfaction when suddenly he heard sound. He turned, a puzzled expression on his face. His aide asked, "What is it, Your Highness?" Rahich held up a hand. "Hush, be quiet." Closing his eyes, Rahich focused his senses, and the image of hurried footsteps, the click of heels on stone, filled his mind. Focusing further, he saw Regria fleeing in terror. A murderous glint entered his eyes. "It seems we have an unexpected guest," he said. "What?" his aide asked. "Catch her," Rahich commanded. Turning to another guard, he ordered, "You too, come with me." "Yes, sir," the guards replied. Rahich watched them go, a thoughtful expression on his face. Regria ran into the rose garden, her thoughts racing. I had hoped Rahich was actually a good person. Even if he was selfish and cruel, I never imagined him to be a monster. Huddled on the floor in a room within the castle, Regria thought, but now, thanks to F-War, I know I have to get away from Rahich at all costs. I have to escape him. Lost in thought, she suddenly heard a voice. "Miss, what are you doing here?" Outside the tower, someone held an umbrella over Rahich as he stood in the rain. He stared at a piece of fabric caught on a withered branch. His aide approached and reported, "Your Highness, we've searched the surrounding area, but there's no sign of any intrusion." Rahich asked, "Where's Regria?" The aide questioned, "Her Highness, the Crown Princess, sir." Rahich's face twisted in a grimace of fury. He turned and snapped, "Follow me." "Yes, Your Highness," the aide replied. Rahich strode away angrily, crumpling the piece of fabric in his hand. Damn it, he thought. Inside, Rahich roared, "Regria rummel. Regria rummel. Regria." He turned to the acolytes, demanding, "Where is Regria? Where is she?" Terrified, they stammered, "She's in the bathroom, Your Highness." Rahich turned towards the bathroom. He flung the door open and strode in, bellowing, "Regria." His aide flushed crimson, covering his eyes. Celine, standing nearby, asked in surprise, "Your Highness?" Meanwhile, Regria, sitting in the bath, asked Rahich, "When did you get here?" Rahich's face darkened. "Isn't it a bit early for a bath?" Celine interjected, "It seems the princess has caught a cold since this morning. Her hands and feet are icy, while the rest of her body is burning up." "So," Regria interrupted, "so I asked Celine to prepare a hot bath for me." Rahich continued his interrogation. "Where are your clothes?" Celine answered, "They're being washed, Your Highness." He then asked, "Did Regria go out today?" Celine replied, "No, Your Highness." Regria asked, "What's wrong, Rahich?" He said stubbornly, "Get out." She asked, surprised, "What?" He pressed, "Get out of the bath. We need to confirm something." Celine spoke anxiously, "Your Highness, if she gets out now, her condition will worsen." Rahich's gaze remained fixed. "I don't care. Get out of the bath now." Regria exclaimed, "Rahich, I'm not wearing anything." He responded in a low voice, "I said I don't care." Regria suddenly raised her voice. "Oh, so you mean you don't care even if I have to be naked in front of a man I barely know? How can you ask me to do that? The Crown Princess of Belligram still has some self-respect, you know." Rahich's face darkened further, and he glanced at his aide. Celine spoke hurriedly. "Miss, you shouldn't speak to His Highness like that. Please calm down." Regria said, "I don't know what's going on, but if you respect my position as Crown Princess, please wait for me in the room. I'll be ready soon, and will come to see you." Rahich narrowed his eyes at her. She didn't flinch, meeting his gaze directly. Then he turned and left, looking back at her with a murderous glint in his eyes. "Don't make me wait too long." Celine and Regria watched him go in silence. Celine turned and asked, "Miss, what was that about?" Regria stood up, her face grim, already dressed in her previous clothes. She thought, that was terrifying. Is this what it feels like to be near a monster who hunts people? I'm too scared to bear it. Once the war is over, and there's no one left to conquer, who will Rahich turn his cruelty and brutality towards? Lost in thought, Celine reached out and called Mississippi. Then Celine embraced Regria, saying, "Your temperature will drop. Please get back in the bath." Regria bent down, putting down her towel, and hugged Celine back. "You're a lifesaver, Celine." "If you hadn't prepared the bath, I would have," Celine replied. "Well, because it was raining and you didn't have an umbrella, I prepared the bath and brought a change of clothes, just in case." Regria smiled. "I see. Thank you so much, Celine. Then Celine asked, but why were you hiding earlier? You looked so panicked when you saw me. It startled me too. Regria said, I'm sorry, Celine. I can never tell you. Celine asked, why not? Regria replied, I don't want to involve you in this. So Celine held Regria's hand and said, all right, but please remember, miss, I'm always on your side. You saved me, so I will repay you, even if it costs me my life. Touched by her words, Regria smiled. That night, as she prepared to go to Reich's room, she thought, I have to stay calm and pretend I don't know anything. No one saw me leave the tower, so, opening the door, Regria quietly entered the room. She said, there's no one here. Where's Reik? Just as she asked, Reik spoke. Regria. Startled, Regria turned around. Suddenly, Reik lifted her face and kissed her. The kiss was urgent and forceful. Regria pushed him away. Stop, she demanded. Why did you suddenly do that? Reik touched his lips. It's the rain. She asked what? He stepped closer. If you're trying to deceive me, you should have wiped the water off your lips. Regria asked, rainwater? What are you talking about? Suddenly, Reik grabbed her throat, making her cry out, ah. Reik said, you lied to me. How dare you? Regria struggled to speak. Reik, he continued, trying to fool me won't work. Regria, stop lying and tell me honestly, where were you all afternoon? Regria stared at him in terror. Reik tightened his grip on her throat in a fury. Lying to me is useless. Regria, stop lying and tell me the truth. Where were you all afternoon? Regria choked, unable to breathe. His eyes, though filled with rage, held something else. Why are you so quiet? Where's your usual sharp tongue? Regria felt like he was a demon. That hand that burned those two people to death. It makes me too scared to speak. Beatrice's voice rang out like a lifeline. Poor Regria, what's wrong? Are you scared? Seeing the change in Regria's eyes, the crown prince hesitated. Beatrice continued, no weapons to fight back with, remember? Or do I really have to explain it to you again? Use your psychic abilities, you idiot. Explain it to Reik and calm him down. Realization dawned on Regria. Right, psychic abilities. I forgot about that. She grabbed Reik's hand. Beatrice said, what would you do without me? Reik said angrily, what are you doing? Regria replied, I'm using the sharp tongue you wanted. What? Regria held his hand tightly, refusing to let go. She lowered her head. Why are all the secrets of this country buried so deep, like at the bottom of a holy well? A colorful light appeared before the crown prince. He stared in surprise, recognizing the light from that morning. Wait, you. Reik suddenly collapsed. Struck by Regria's attack, he cried out, you're using psychic abilities. No. Reik covered his face in fear. Stop, Regria, stop. A swirling light erupted around them, shooting upwards. Regria suddenly felt a sharp pain and clutched herself. She collapsed, feeling an intense, burning sensation. Reik said, it seems you misunderstood. No one can enter my mind without my permission. Regria glanced at him. Her eyes glazed over, seeing his blurry figure. Then she passed out. Reik looked surprised. Damn it, Regria fainted from the backlash. After an unknown amount of time, Regria was awakened by laughter. Beatrice propped her chin on her hand. Reik's expression was priceless. That moment, Beatrice glanced at Regria. That was the best show I've seen lately. Regria said, confused, what happened? Did the psychic abilities not work? Just a few minutes ago, he almost strangled me. Beatrice flicked Regria's nose and patted her head consolingly. Poor child, you never asked to be summoned here or to wake up in this damned country, but you've been enduring it all this time. Regria teared up. I want to go back to my world. Unfortunately, Beatrice replied, I don't know how you can return to your holy world, and if you leave, my soul can't return to my body. But we can find a way. Beatrice sighed and turned away. Actually, I'll be leaving soon, Regria. What? Regria was stunned. Are you joking? Beatrice continued, I'm not joking, but I feel terrible leaving you here alone. Regria said sadly, but why are you leaving so suddenly? Beatrice replied, like I said, we're not allowed to meet like this in your subconscious. Then what am I supposed to do? You have to survive, no matter the cost. Beatrice leaned forward and grasped Regria's hands. Remember my promise to reveal the ugly truth of this world. Yes, Regria replied. You said you'd tell me when I wanted to know everything. Beatrice looked at Regria. You're curious, aren't you? Yes, so tell me. Beatrice smiled. All right, I know you want to hear it. Listen carefully, because I'm only saying this once. The truth is, all saintesses die within 10 years of giving birth to their first child. Regria gasped. What? They die after giving birth? Yes. Everyone keeps this secret from the saintesses so they won't unite in protest or refuse to get pregnant. But how can they do that? Why did you make me the crown princess? I made you the crown princess, not to have children. I only wanted you to be the crown princess until you found a way out. But your game can end here because you're ready now. So please. Beatrice leaned closer to Regria. Please leave Reik as soon as possible. Tears welled in Beatrice's eyes as she looked at Regria. Run away and live in seclusion freely. Beatrice gripped Regria's hands. Use your charm, the kind that makes people adore and cherish you. Don't worry. If you feel anxious, use your smile as a sword and your tears as a shield. Find allies who can help you, but don't trust them. In fact, don't trust anyone. Remember, Beatrice gave Regria a gentle smile. Finally, Beatrice pulled Regria into an embrace. The hug startled Regria, leaving her unsure how to react. Closing her eyes, Beatrice stroked Regria's hair. Find someone to love, because that person will help you keep going. Regria looked confused. Huh? What do you mean? You just told me not to trust anyone. You can love, but don't trust. You'll understand eventually. I know you're a smart girl. Before vanishing, Beatrice spoke her final words to Regria. It seems our time is up. Beatrice gently brushed Regria's bangs aside. She said cheerfully, I know you'll survive. Regria rummel, you will survive no matter what. 2 weeks later, in the Crown Prince's study. The Crown Prince wasn't paying attention to his book. He sat there lost in thought. His aide, noticing his state, said, Are you worried, Your Highness? If so, why not send some flowers and wish her a speedy recovery? Reik seemed to ponder and hesitate. After hurting Regria, the Crown Prince hadn't been working, just quietly contemplating. It seemed he wanted to reconcile with Regria. The unwitting aide urged him to check on her and give her some daffodils. The best thing to do is to go see Miss Regria. The Crown Prince stubbornly deflected. Absurd. Who's worried about whom? Seeing his master's dishonesty, the aide added, Your Highness, you also need to take care of your own health. Not only are you working hard, but you're also not resting properly while waiting for Miss Regria to wake up. I've been sleeping while waiting. That's not unusual, but it's been 2 weeks. Why is Miss Regria still like this? Reik replied, She's completely forgotten. Reik spoke in a detached tone that rendered his aide speechless. You've been watching her 24/7 and still won't admit it. He continued, This question might be a bit awkward, but are you certain it was Miss Regria who broke into the tower that day? Reik admitted, No, it's just a hunch. But if she really was there that day and witnessed what happened, what do you plan to do? Reik fell silent, deep in thought. He couldn't decide how to deal with her. Suddenly, a servant rushed in. Your Highness, I have urgent news. The 2 men in the room looked at him. Urgent news? Speak, the servant announced. The future crown princess has awakened. Regria was in her room, surrounded by bustling servants. However, her condition seemed off. I don't remember what happened, Regria told them. The physician at her side asked, Do you remember the last thing you did? Or can you recall why you have bruises on your neck? Regria shook her head. I'm sorry, I don't remember that either. Hearing the news, the Crown Prince rushed to see Regria. The physician explained, Your Highness, as the royal physician, I believe she has temporary amnesia. As far as I know, people with prolonged high fevers can experience memory loss. Her maid, Celine, spoke up. Miss Regria had a persistent high fever that day. Reik turned to his aide. What do you make of this? Does she really have temporary amnesia? Or is she? Reik looked at Regria, just pretending, seeing Regria after so many days. Reik addressed everyone in the room. All of you leave. At the Crown Prince's command, everyone filed out. Only the 2 of them remained in the room. Regria clutched her head. Reik, I don't understand what the doctor said. They told me I was unconscious for 2 weeks. What happened to me? The Crown Prince approached Regria. The doctor said you have temporary amnesia. What? Reik looked at Regria. What's the last thing you remember before you lost consciousness? Regria answered hesitantly. I'm not sure. I think I was taking a bath. Reik reached out and touched her neck. Regria, what? When a person lies, their heart rate increases and their blood pressure rises. They also tend to avoid eye contact or touch their nose and mouth. But her demeanor remained calm, her heart rate normal. Seeing Reik touching her neck, Regria asked again, Reik made an excuse. I was checking your pulse. It's fine, it's normal. Then Rahich removed his hand from Regria's neck. Next, Rahich reached out and held Regria's hand. Their eyes met. Regria looked at the man before her with confusion. Rahich, are you all right? Why do you ask? Your face. Rahich was puzzled. Your eyes look haggard and pale, like you've returned from death. He was taken aback by her words. He turned away. I'm fine, just haven't been sleeping well. Regria asked with concern. Oh, because you were worried about me? You should take better care of yourself. Regria cupped Rahich's face. You should take good care of yourself. It's one of your good qualities. How about I use telepathy to dispel the negative energy for you? Remembering that scene, Rahich felt embarrassed and turned away. I feel like you're making fun of me. Regria quickly corrected him. Don't say that. It seems you've dealt with a lot while I was ill, so I'll soothe your energy. Saying this, Regria lifted her skirt, revealing her thigh. What? Rahich's face flushed crimson. Don't you want to? Rahich's hand trembled as he placed it on the bed, then held Regria's thigh, feeling a sliver of comfort, but still said, Since you are recovering from your illness, I will indulge you. Regria looked at him with a pleasant expression. She stroked his forehead. Thanks to your advice, I was able to deceive that devil. Thank you so much, Beatrice. I'll live as you said, using a smile as my sword and tears as my spear. After a while, Rahich also closed his eyes peacefully on the bed. I still remember the class motto hanging in a certain classroom in high school. A few encounters can change a person's life. At the time, I didn't think it made any sense, and even thought, will I really meet so many such people? But today reminded me of that phrase. As Regria slowly sipped her tea and pondered, Rahich sat up in bed. He looked much calmer. But now that I've met her, I understand what that phrase means. Beatrice. As Rahich stared blankly, Regria asked, Are you awake? Would you like some tea? It's still warm. She thought to herself, now I want to venture into this world, meet more people, and find a chance to escape. And I'm going to do it all on my own. The warm tea was steaming. Rahich and Regria sat opposite each other, enjoying the tea. I haven't slept so soundly in a long time, Rahich commented. Rahich, I have a request, Regria ventured. What is it? Rahich asked suspiciously. I want to go out, Regria suggested. Rahich immediately replied, You should limit your movements until you feel better. Regria continued, I don't mean I want to go for a walk. I want to leave this mansion and see other places besides the Belligram temple. Being confined here is suffocating. Rahich replied coldly, You're being unreasonable. If you're bored, walk around here. You cannot leave the mansion. But if I can't leave here, you'll lose the bet. Is that okay? Regria countered. Rahich, utterly surprised, asked what? Regria clapped her hands together. Have you forgotten our agreement? You said you'd make me beg you to make me the crown princess within 100 days. But at this rate, I don't think I'll be begging you for anything. I don't even want to be the crown princess anymore. Rahich frowned. Are you saying you want to escape from this place and not even become the crown princess? He asked. Goodness, I didn't say I wanted to leave here, Regria chided. Then why did you mention our agreement? Rahich questioned. To his surprise, Regria said, a date. Our second date. This time I want to get to know you more in a new place. Then Regria gave Rahich a sweet smile. Rahich remained silent, not answering her. Seeing this, Regria closed her eyes and urged, Don't stare at me like that. Answer me. Will you help me? You making things difficult, Rahich said. All right, how about we go see the opera next week? Regria was a little surprised. The opera? Rahich told her. I received an invitation from Joshua this morning. It seems Schumann Bukovac is holding a personal concert at the Opera House and wants you to attend. He probably enjoyed your performance. This time, it was his turn to urge, Don't just giggle like that, answer me. Will you go to the concert with me? Perhaps by looking at Regria's expression now, we can guess. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, it was next week, the day the two had promised to go to the concert. In the hall of a certain building, gentlemen and ladies were all dressed in extreme finery. But at this moment, their gazes were all directed in one direction. Goodness is that the crown prince. Walking next to him is the Summerhertz family's mad dog, isn't it? Shoo, be careful. That young lady is going to be the crown princess. Their whispers were all overheard by the two. Regria thought to herself, There are a lot of people here who recognize me. I need to be careful when I sneak around in this palace. The two walked together to a large door. Then, the door opened automatically. Unsure of what she saw, Regria seemed a little surprised. 2 chairs were placed at the back of the stage hall. I prepared this place as a gift for your speedy recovery, Rahich said. Consider thanks for helping me sleep so well. Rahich, Regria called out softly. Rahich extended his hand in invitation. reaction. Don't just stare, have a seat. Regria then walked in, surprised. Oh, just then, a voice rang out from behind them. Wow, I didn't think there would be a day like this. You're the last person I expected to meet here, brother. The person who happened to come in was none other than Reik's younger brother, Afwa. Both of them were surprised to see him. Reik called his name coldly. Afwa Senua Masquerade, what are you doing here? Afwa retorted, what do you mean? I'm one of the sponsors supporting this opera house. Of course I'd be here, wouldn't I? Reik looked at him coldly, his voice laced with sarcasm. You don't know a thing about music. Why would you be a sponsor? Afwa chuckled lightly. Is there a law against someone like me sponsoring the opera house? He quickly changed his expression and bowed to Regria. But you must be my sister-in-law. It's a pleasure to meet you. Regria, also feigning unfamiliarity, replied, oh, hello. Afwa bowed politely and introduced himself. My name is Afwa, Senua Masquerade. I'm Rahich Verisil Belligram's half-brother. Regria smiled. I'm Regria. Rahich, standing behind them at this point, looked annoyed. Afwa glanced up, an idea sparking in his mind. He stepped forward and embraced Regria in greeting. Needless to say, Rahich looked ready to explode. The distance between Regria and Afwa closed. Unbeknownst to Rahich, Afwa whispered in Regria's ear, it's been a while. Did you ever visit that stone tower I mentioned? He didn't know if she heard him, but Rahich seemed to be glaring, looking somewhat angry, whether out of jealousy towards Regria or because he'd overheard the whisper. A few moments later, the concert began, and pleasant music filled the air. Music flooded the stands as Regria sat quietly in the back. She was sandwiched between the two brothers. Afwa broke the awkward silence. Who knew we'd be sitting together like this? My apologies for interrupting your date. Rahich frowned. You don't sound sorry at all. So shut up. Afwa chuckled softly. Oh my, are you angry, brother? How scary. Rahich turned to the two of them. Now you understand why the royals all have to sit in these separate seats, Regria, to avoid sitting next to bastards like him. Afwa retorted, turning his attention to Regria. You look tired, Regria. Are you all right? Regria asked, slightly surprised. I'm fine. Do I look tired? Afwa said pointedly. Oh, I was just worried. I heard you were unconscious for 2 weeks. That's terrible. I thought the crown princess should be better cared for. But what do I know? Reik gave him a cold look. It's none of your business, he warned. Afwa chuckled. I wouldn't be worried if you took proper care of her. As a saint knight, aren't you ashamed? Reik muttered. It seems you have a lot of complaints about me. Afwa replied. Really? Is it that obvious? Reik suggested. Shall we talk outside? Afwa scoffed. Fine. Let's go outside. Regria, sitting between them, finally lost her patience. She spread her arms, admonishing them, both of you enough. Please be quiet. I can't even hear Schumann's performance. Afwa said indignantly, but he started it. Regria said sternly, don't act like children. It doesn't matter who started it. Enough. And you too, Reik. Reik frowned. What did I do? Regria replied instantly. You're the crown prince, and yet you're openly bickering with your brother. Control yourself. Reik, exasperated, could only turn away. Regria, sitting awkwardly in the middle, thought to herself, they're brothers. Why are they always at odds? Never mind the performance. I just want to lie in bed and sleep. I'm so tired. However, Regria was immediately startled awake. Looking at the hand that gripped hers tightly, it was Afwa's. Regria gulped nervously. What is he doing? Reik is right next to me. Is he crazy? What if we make psychic contact? Wait. Regria flinched, looking at Afwa's hazy eyes. Is he intentionally trying to make psychic contact with me? Afwa, let go of my hand. Let go. If I make psychic contact with you here, with Reik right next to me, it's no different from suicide. But a small bird appeared on a branch in front of Regria. She had already entered psychic contact, an idyllic scene of a stream and a forest. Regria realized, I really did enter his inner world. Looking around blankly, Regria was startled by a rustling sound. Several colorful venomous snakes were flicking their tongues at her. Not only that, but a crocodile also emerged from the river. Regria thought, a crocodile? Could that crocodile be Afwa's ego? Do I need to purify it? The crocodile opened its mouth and moved towards Regria. In a jungle like this, a crocodile usually symbolizes death. But surprisingly, the crocodile seemed to coexist peacefully with the small bird. Emboldened, Regria reached out and placed her hand on its head, stroking it gently. The ferocious crocodile suddenly burst into tears, a symbol of death, yet understood coexistence with life. Afwa Senua Masquerade, Could you be the one to change my life? As Regria touched the crocodile's tongue, a door appeared in her mind. Their hands also separated. Afua realized with elation. The tower. She had been to the tower. So the door that had briefly appeared was something Afua had seen as well. He silently assessed Regria. She was a clever, yet cunning woman. I knew it. I knew you were lying about your amnesia. The music on stage stopped at just the right moment. Waves of applause echoed through the stands, breaking the previous quiet atmosphere. Everyone stood up, thoroughly satisfied. As expected of Schumann, Regria and the two men also rose from their seats to applaud. Rahich glanced at her and asked, I thought the performance was wonderful. Did you enjoy it? Regria nodded. Yes, it was wonderful. It felt like I was traversing a lush jungle. Hearing this, Rahich looked at her in bewilderment. What are you talking about, you fool? Regria ignored him and turned to ask Afua, what did you think of the performance, Sensual? Do you still think this opera house is worthy of your patronage? Afua stroked his chin thoughtfully. It's truly beyond words. If I could, I'd like to sponsor her for life. He smiled meaningfully at Regria. Regria understood the implication. Oh, I see. I'm glad to hear you say that. Afua smiled silently. It seemed the two of them clearly understood each other's intentions, and the only one annoyed in this situation was Rahich. He glared at Afua and said coldly, Get lost. The look startled Afua. What? Rahich stepped forward, pulling Regria towards him. The performance is over, so stop flirting with my woman and get lost. Afua sneered. Why are you so angry? You're acting as if I'd trifle with the woman who's about to be my brother's wife. Hearing the taunt, Rahich's anger intensified. He gritted his teeth. It seems you don't value your life. Afua chuckled lightly. Wow, are you serious? All right, try it. I'm ready. Seeing him reach in his chest, Regria felt a surge of alarm. A weapon? She immediately raised her voice to stop him. Wait, don't fight him, Sensual. There's no need to go that far. Afua silently continued to pull something out. Regria, frightened, leaned against Rahich's chest, shielding him. However, what Afua pulled out was a letter. Don't worry, Regria. This is just an invitation. What, did you think I was going to pull out a knife? Every winter, the Masquerade family holds a masquerade ball. I don't care if Rahich comes or not, but I really hope you'll attend, Regria. With that, Afua sank into the ground, preparing to leave. Rahich watched him with extreme annoyance. Then, Afua seemed to remember something and called out, Oh, right. Rahich, do you know what this gesture means? He raised his middle finger, grinning. Needless to say, Rahich's face darkened. Regria also stared at him, pale. Afua pointed his finger towards the ground, delivering his final words. They say this gesture is a way of expressing love in the divine realm. I love you, brother. Then he was gone. Rahich seethed. That sly little. Regria silently stared at the invitation she had just received, the mysterious black envelope. A few moments later, as they walked down the street, Rahich said, If you receive an invitation from the Masquerade family, you must attend the event. Regria was a little surprised. Really? Is that a law? Rahich shook his head. No, it's more of an unspoken rule. The head of the Masquerade family, Sensual, is quite talented. For years, he's been able to gather underground organizations and connect them. The members of this association meet annually at the Masquerade Masquerade Ball. Rahich suddenly stopped, causing Regria to look at him quizzically. Rahich frowned. Didn't you say you wanted to walk around the theater district before heading back? Regria nodded. Ah, yes, as the future crown princess, I'm curious about the lives of the people of Belligram. Rahich snatched the invitation from Regria's hand, then stopped staring at this scrap of paper and looked at the streets. Regria blinked. Oh, all right. She then began to intently observe the bustling, crowded streets. Rahich continued, I agreed to your request as an apology for the trouble Sensual caused today. I'll do anything you want, but there won't be a second time. Regria turned her head, silently assessing the man. Rahich always spoke with a threat or a warning. He must have gotten everything in the world by yelling at people and coercing them, but it wouldn't benefit her to annoy him. Regria suddenly reached out and took Rahich's hand. She knew the first thing to do was give him what he wanted. As expected, a small smile played on Rahich's lips. By now, the sky had begun to darken, and the streetlights flickered on. Like any other couple, the two strolled hand in hand. A commoner suddenly gasped, and the girl beside him asked in confusion, You startled me. What's wrong? The man whispered, That's the crown prince. The girl's eyes widened. What? Where? The man immediately pointed towards Regria, who was holding Rahich's hand. There, He's standing in front of the bakery. Delicious, tempting cakes were displayed on the counter. Regria asked excitedly, "Can I have a cake with lots of cream on it?" The shopkeeper beamed. "Oh, of course. One cream cake coming right up." Rahich grumbled, "I can't believe the future crown princess is eating street food." Regria frowned. "Stop nagging. What's wrong with street food?" Rahich lowered his voice. "I'm not nagging. I'm just saying you're already so frail. You shouldn't be eating low-quality food." Regria's eyes were glued to the cakes on display, practically drooling. That's exactly what nagging is. Besides, any food eaten with joy is good food, isn't it? The shopkeeper immediately nodded enthusiastically. Yes, I completely agree. However, the shopkeeper immediately noticed Rahich's sharp glare. His face paled, and his smile became strained. A few seconds later, the shopkeeper handed Regria a tempting ice cream cone. "Your cake is ready." Regria took it excitedly. "Wow, it looks delicious." Then, without hesitation, she took a bite. She smiled happily. "Wow, this is what I'm talking about. Sweet and utterly delicious." Rahich watched her with a sullen expression. "Is it really that good?" Regria held up the ice cream cone cheerfully. "It is. Do you want a bite? Here, open your mouth and say it." Rahich turned his head impatiently. "Are you intoxicated by the sugar in that cake? Take it away." Regria playfully brought the cake closer. "Don't be like that. Come on, open wide, or I'll drop it on the ground." Rahich exclaimed, "I said no. Enough." Unbeknownst to them, many villagers were watching them curiously and laughing. One of them looked a bit strange, peering from under his straw hat towards the cheerfully laughing Regria. There was a strange object, hurtling straight towards Regria. Rahich noticed it instantly, reaching out and shielding Regria from the object. Regria asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" Rahich said gravely, "There's an assassin." Regria's eyes widened. "What?" Rahich silently looked at the hand that had just blocked the dart, and his expression darkened. "Damn it." Bluish-purple lines appeared on the back of his hand. The delicious ice cream cone tumbled from Regria's grasp and landed on the ground. She rushed to his side, her voice filled with worry. "Rahich, your hand!" She watched in horror as the poison visibly spread through his flesh. As if sensing something, he looked up. The crowd, alerted to the danger, scattered in a panicked frenzy, leaving only the strange man clutching his straw hat. He spat more venom, not once, but several times, the deadly projectiles aimed directly at them. Rahich yanked Regria down, shouting, "Get down." The unfortunate shopkeeper, caught completely off guard, was struck by the poison. He collapsed instantly. Regria turned, her eyes widening in terror at the sight. The strange man prepared to attack again, but just then, passing soldiers shouted, "Who are you? Hey you, cease your suspicious activity and drop what's in your hand." Seeing the approaching soldiers, the strange man turned and fled. The soldiers gave chase. "He's running. Catch him." Regria, pale with fear, breathed a sigh of relief. Rahich draped his arm around her shoulders. "Regria, are you all right?" She couldn't believe he was concerned for her well-being when he himself was injured. Just then, a soldier ran up to them. "Your Highness, are you injured? What are you doing out in the streets?" Rahich spoke in a low voice. "Someone attempted to assassinate the crown princess. Thoroughly search the surrounding area. There may be more than one assassin. Call for reinforcements." "Yes, Your Highness." As they spoke, Regria gasped at the sight behind them. The shopkeeper's face was now a network of dark veins, his skin turning a sickly hue. Sometime later, Rahich lay in bed, listening to his subordinate's report. Eritem sent the assassin. The Emperor must be wary of the crown princess. Perhaps we should use this opportunity to eliminate erratums. Spies. Rahich replied grimly. We've tried that before without success. It seems there aren't just a few of them. Some have been living in this country for over a decade, plotting against it. They could be disguised as ordinary workers, tavern owners. Even street cleaners could be Eritem spies. At that moment, the physician, preparing to begin treatment, addressed Rahich. "This will be painful, Your Highness." Rahich nodded. "Wait, Joshua. While I receive treatment, escort the crown princess out." Joshua bowed his head. "Yes, Your Highness." He approached Regria politely, offering a small smile. "Let us go, Your Highness." Though worried, Regria followed Joshua out of the room. She glanced back at Rahich with concern, but he didn't meet her gaze. Once Regria was gone, Rahich addressed the physician. "You may begin." The physician poured a pink solution onto Rahich's veined arm, causing him to tremble. He groaned in agony, his eyes rolling back. The physician murmured soothingly, "It will be over soon, Your Highness." Regria, not far away, clearly heard Rahich's cries. Seeing her expression, Joshua offered comfort. "Don't worry, Your Highness. The crown prince is strong. I'm sure he'll overcome the pain soon. Time passed quickly, and darkness fell. Finally, the elderly physician emerged from the crown prince's room. Joshua and Regria were still waiting outside. Seeing him, Joshua quickly asked, "How did the treatment go?" The physician replied calmly, "Fortunately, thanks to the antidote, it went rather smoothly." Joshua covered his face with his hand. "Really? That's wonderful." Before leaving, the physician said, "The crown prince is calling for that person, Your Highness, the crown princess." Regria looked surprised. "Me?" The physician nodded. "Yes, you should go in." And so, Regria found herself hesitantly standing at the doorway. Rahich sat in a chair, his breathing heavy. Hearing her footsteps, he opened his eyes and called out, "Regria." Regria asked softly, "Are you all right?" Rahich replied, "Our holy knight isn't poisoned so easily. However, I want you to know that this experience wasn't pleasant in the slightest." Regria's voice was soft. "You almost died." Rahich shook his head. "No, you almost died. I wasn't the assassin's target." Regria frowned, confusion clouding her features. "You knew that, and yet you still agreed to walk with me in the city." Rahich nodded. "Yes." Regria's brow furrowed deeper. "But why?" Rahich met her gaze. "Because I was there to protect you." His words brought tears to Regria's eyes. "What about your own safety? You knew this could happen. What if you had been seriously injured? Why would you put yourself in harm's way for me, making me indebted to you? I won't thank you for protecting me. Do you understand? I won't say thank you." A faint smile played on Rahich's lips. "You don't need to thank me, but don't speak as if you aren't worth saving. You're the most important person to me right now. So if something like this were to happen again, I would still choose to save you." Leaving the romantic tension of the moment behind, the scene shifted to the Rummel family's house. Sobs echoed from the yard. The crying figure was none other than Jazelle's younger sister. Just then, someone appeared, asking, "Why are you crying here alone?" Jazelle's crying ceased the moment she saw the person. Standing before her with a smile was a four. He wore a bright smile, but who knew what schemes he was plotting?